Doctors, we are live. You can start the session.
Good evening, friends. On behalf of the Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association, as the president of the Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association, I have a great pleasure welcoming you all for this TNOA, IJO, Publish and Flourish webinar. As you all know, this publication has become a very, very important aspect of our training and also the residency program. And we have to give full credit to our editor of the IJO, Santosh Honavar, who is here with us, who has taken the the IJO to a different level altogether. I thank him for organizing this particular webinar, which will be useful not only for the residents and the postgraduates, but also for the practicing ophthalmologists in general. And I think it's very important and to have the publication. And more importantly, we've got a fantastic, the star faculty across India, who are all, I would say, the gold standard as far as the publications are concerned, who are here with us to share their expertise and experience as far as the publication is concerned. So without much ado, I would also like to thank our editor of the TJOSR, Dr. Sharmila, for coordinating this webinar. And of course, Dr. Nirmal Frederick, the Vice President of TNOA, the former editor of the TJOSR, who will be joining us very shortly. And all the faculty, welcome all of you on behalf of the TNOA. So I will be just going through a small presentation. Shall I share my screen, Santosh?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll share my screen now. And okay, please, can you give the permission for me to? Okay, I've got the. You're able to see my slides?
We see your desktop. Yes, we can see the slides. You can go to screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll just take only 3 or 4 minutes to tell you guys that what we, as the president of the TNOA and the Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association, have been doing this for the past 7 months. As you all know, we started the whole year in September 2021, when I took over as the president of TNOA in the Madras Icon Conference. And the theme for this year was Tamil Nadu Smiling and TNOA Shining. And we've been doing exactly that for the past 7 months. And
so
we have...
video is off.
Yes?
Your video is off.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're able to get my video?
No, your face video.
Yeah, I know that. I'm sorry about it.
Now we can share the screen.
Yeah.
உங்களை பாக்குறதுக்காக ஆவலோட இருக்காங்க சார் எல்லாரும்.
I'm sorry. Some confusion is there. What? Very sorry about it. I don't know why the video is not come.
Or maybe you can finish the presentation and then.
Yeah, now it's okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. The past 7 months, we've been doing a lot of activities. And as I told you, Tamil Nadu Smiling and TNOA Shining is the theme for this year. We have the Walk the Talk series first Saturday of every month, wherein all the luminaries of TNOA we are interviewing. And the Walk the Talk series is actually inspiring and motivating all of us to follow these leaders who have done tremendous work in the field of ophthalmology for the past several decades. And of course, we have the TNOA ARC PG Catalyst Masterclass series, which is the second Friday of every month, which has become a real huge success among the residents and practicing ophthalmologists as well. And every month, we're having a master who's taking care of all the subspecialties of ophthalmology as well. And then, of course, we have the TNOA Connect series, the last Sunday of every month, connecting all the major institutes. And as you know, all the major institutes are in Tamil Nadu, and which is very useful, not only for the practicing ophthalmology, but also for the residents as well. And this is called the Connect, Communicate, and Consolidate program. Last month, we did a very unique program, and all the inspiration for this program is from nothing but none other than Dr. Santosh TNOA, who's been doing this eye focus program. He has hit a double century recently, and and he has been the source of inspiration, motivation for all of us to do something like this for the TNOA as well. This is called the Gurukulam TNOA, wherein all the 4 Sundays of in April, we did the PG teaching program, and more importantly, 19 top faculty of India across the country, which had covered about 26 various topics, which is very, very useful for all the residents and the postgraduates as well. I started this program way back in September, and which is called the Publish and Prosper. When I took over as a president in September, I immediately thought, okay, let us recognize and encourage all the postgraduates, the residents, and even the practicing ophthalmologists to come forward and publish. So the Publish and Prosper scheme, which I started way back in September, till now 54 people have benefited by this. And every peer-reviewed publication, they get a cash prize of 2,000 rupees, along with the gold medal and a citation as well from the president of the TNOA, that is myself. And this has also evoked a lot of very good response, and more people are actually coming forward to do the scientific publications as well. And of course, these are the various people, and more than 54 people have actually gained from this particular scheme. And of course, the TJOSR, the journal of the TNOA, which has been the main arm, I would say, as far as the Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association is concerned, it's been taken to a different height by the previous editor, Dr. Nirmal Frederick, who is currently the vice president of TNOA, who has been actually the brainchild. It's been his brainchild as far as the TJOSR is concerned. Before, it used to be called the Journal of the Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association. Subsequently, he renamed it as the Tamil Nadu Journal of Ophthalmic Science and Research, the Journal of TNOA, the directory of the open access journal it has become, which is a very significant move, because this will recognize even the faculty for the research publications in the medical colleges as well. And online issues have become very, very popular, close to about 60,000 hits, which is very, very high, I would say, for the TJOSR. The quality of the journal has gone up. The impact factor is also much better. The hats off to the current editor, Sharmila Devi, who's been doing a wonderful job for the past 4 years as well. And of course, the different jargons we can use, the publish or perish. We used to do that before, but now we say publish and prosper, publish and perform. And of course, now Santosh has come out with a beautiful jargon, which is a publish and flourish, which is again very, very important. IJO, we cannot say the IJO has become the gold standard now, thanks to Santosh TNOA. Of course, the previous editors have also done a very good job, but IJO has been taken to a different level, as I told you in the beginning, by Santosh TNOA. Hats off to you, Santosh, for taking this. The quality of the articles, the quality of the pictures is simply amazing and incredible. Peer reviewed, the impact factor has gone up, case reports have been brought, the IJO videos, all new concepts, new innovations as far as the IJO, which is actually attracting all of us to IJO. I think the IJO, even online issues, I'm sure will have a lot of hits as well. So these are the things which I wanted to say in the preamble. I'm sure each of us, the faculty, will have different things to discuss. And ultimately, at the end of the program, we'll have a better understanding of how to publish, how to prepare yourself for publication. The biggest problem among the practicing ophthalmologists who are busy in the clinical work, that they don't have time for publication. They don't have the clinical material. They got everything. They've got statistics. They don't want to sit down and publish. This there should be some way wherein we have to overcome this barrier and the mental block to create them or encourage them to do more publications. Thank you very much for the wonderful opportunity. Again, I would like to thank Santosh, Sharmila, and the entire team for giving the TNOA an opportunity to host this webinar. I'll stop sharing my screen now. Yeah. Santosh.
Yeah. Sharmila will take it over.
Sharmila.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's my privilege and pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar series on Publish and Flourish. IJO in association with collaboration with TNOA, Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association. So this webinar series has an interesting lineup of topics and speakers. We have the who's who of publication arena as the chairpersons. It's my privilege to introduce the chairpersons for this session. And can I invite Dr. Rangraj Venkatesh sir, Professor Biswas sir, Dr. Raju Raman, and Mohan Rajan sir. Shall we start the first talk, or we'll go about with the introduction of the chairpersons first?
The talk. We can start the talk.
That person does not require any introduction. All of them are very big people as far as they don't require any introduction. I think we should go on to Dr. Vishali Gupta.
Okay, the first talk we have, what is the need to publish? So Professor Vishali Gupta is an accomplished VR surgeon and UA expert of international repute. She's working at PGIMR, Chandigarh, India. She has keen interest in inflammation and infections of eye, and she has a lot of original work on intraocular tuberculosis. She has more than 900 invited lectures and over 305 publications in peer-reviewed journals. She's the secretary of International UAID Study Group and member of American Academy of Ophthalmology. She's received several named awards and also holds a US patent for multiplex PCR. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Sharmila, for the very kind introduction. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Mohan Rajan for taking TNOA to another level altogether, and of course, Santosh and his team for making all of us very, very proud of our own Indian Journal of Ophthalmology. Hats off to Santosh and team for the kind of the work he has been doing for the last so many years. So the topic that Santosh has given me today is, why do we need to publish? I think the first thing that we all think of is the recognition, because the deepest principle in human nature is you want to be appreciated. So publish kind of makes you, as well as your work, more recognizable. It's very important because you may be the first one to see some new patient, develop a technique, a technology in your field. But if you don't publish it, you kind of remain unknown. So any observation that you are making that you feel is new, it's worth publishing and telling others. The second thing it adds to is credibility. Credibility is kind of important because being the richest man in symmetry, that is what Steve Jobs says, doesn't matter to me. Going to bed at every night saying we've done something wonderful, and that's what matters. And I think as clinicians, we may be researchers, we may be anything, but all of us, patient is the priority. And if the end of your career, you can say, well, you made some difference towards the patient management, I think that is what research is all about. Third is that it will also help you in your career advancement, because innovation kind of distinguish what is a leader and what is a follower. And we have this familiar publish or perish, or now publish and flourish. This paradigm in academia is very important because, you've got to innovate, you've got to move on with life, and you've got to have edge over your colleagues. You do want to make a difference because we are here to put a dent in the universe. Otherwise, why else we be there? There are so many, I think, more than 20,000 ophthalmologists in India alone. So why should you be just one of them? Why should you not be the one? And the only thing which will make a difference, which will make you recognizable, are your publications. And fifth is anyone, anywhere can make a positive difference. And once you publish your research, you are helping your colleagues who will learn from your mistakes, because research does not always have to be a huge data. It can be a simple mistake in the form of the case report that you are sharing with others. Now, very briefly, I'm going to talk about my experience of research, and I have picked up this topic of tuberculosis, where we did ocular TB study, collaborative ocular TB study. So how does it bring about? Now, what was the need? As a uveitis person, I was sitting, seeing the uveitis patients, seeing them again and again. And what I realized, this disease is heterogeneous, has regional differences. There is very unstandardized diagnostic as well as treatment practices that vary not from country to country, but even within the country, we were not all on the same page. We had no common language. So as a researcher, the first thing is that why you want to do it. So my aim at that time was to have a multi-centric trial on ocular TB. So that first is, of course, recognition comes as a secondary event, but the first thing is that we make ourselves clear to the physician that, buddy, this patient needs TB treatment, so please give him without questioning us. And of course, we had no funding for it and nobody funds TB. So the first step is we kind of gathered, I'm not going to bore you with the logistic because that's not the topic of my talk, but I'm just going to show you how publishing helps you to advance step by step. So we had 4 members. Within the 4 members, we developed some guidelines, some this thing, and we involved 25 centers from different parts of the world. So first meeting was very simple. It was just a like-minded people, and you can see it was just a handful of us. We all met as a sponsored meeting in one of our meetings in San Francisco. We just discussed like friends. And the thing was, let's do something for our TB patients. And as we started, we collected the real world data and we developed this platform with the help of students. Now, the beauty of this is that you need researchers, you need students. So when you are in the learning phase and you want to publish, it's very important to be a part of team. And we had these students, which we were privileged to have from our institutes, who just designed everything, no money. They just did everything, designed a beautiful platform, did the data entry, so much so that we had a publication saying that the lessons in digital epidemiology, coordinating multi-center research across 10 countries without any funding. So research is not only about having a huge data. Research is sharing what you are doing, helping others, because if tomorrow one of you wants to work on one of the orphan diseases or the non-glamorous diseases, you may be able to replicate this methodology that we did so that you are not suffering from funding deficiencies. And this I'm telling to all of the young students who find it very difficult to get funding in the beginning. So they get deterred by the fact that researcher is only for the handful of the people who know the people who are giving money. So you can make a dent if you are serious about it. Well, there came the first report, and you can see JAMA ophthalmology, you can see the amount of the views. And of course, then it went on, and this is how you start working. And we have a special supplement on COTS, which is coming in ocular immunology inflammation. The publications were numerous, but these publications will, how will they help you? And that's the topic of my talk. So what were the aims that I fulfilled? The first aim which I fulfilled was, so far, and I'm being very blunt and honest here, before collaborative ocular TB study, if we will go to a forum, they would say that only Shankar Netralaya and PGI sees TB patient, rest of the India is not seen. So they will not believe it. And Dr. Biswas is here, the kind of the humiliation we suffered in the hands of one of the prestigious funding agency, where somebody just told us that TB does not exist. You are the only people who talk about it. So the first point which we said was that there are 25 uveitis experts with more than 20 years of experience who have shared their data out of their love for TB and not because we were paying them money per patient to enter. So the disease actually exists. And of course, it also led as a fallout of us recognition of the lead investigators as leaders in ocular tuberculosis, which meant we got invited symposium at ARVO, we got like all the major international societies. Whenever they think of TB, they invite the COTS group to hold this. So that is a kind of a added advantage of publishing, because you want to be known, you know. But how does this research help my patients? Because that's what it's all about. Now, when I look at the uveitis expert, we all agree that, well, everybody is seeing TB, but the thing is, when I want to give TB, or my friend in XYZ center wants to give anti-TB drugs, they send it to pulmonologist or internist who just say the TB does not, there is no active TB in the lung, so no need to give TB treatment. So what should we do? So even so much so that when you look at the policy decisions from India, it contains guidelines of extrapulmonary TB, but not on ocular TB. But after this presentation, after the work by COTS, we got into ICMR and MCI, and for the first time, we are existing as a recognized form of TB, and that is possible only because we published. If we had not published, people would not have included us as a part of National TB Elimination Program. We did work on standardization of the nomenclature and the things which were required, you know, and we, of course, then developed the consensus. And the basic purpose of consensus was to answer the next question that, well, this is something all the experts agree, and this is our Delphi. And once you have these conditions, please treat the patient. This is the meeting in Chandigarh, which we all did. It was a very serious meeting, but it was a fun meeting as well. So what we did, we developed this icon together towards tomorrow, and we had 2 reports of this consensus meeting in ophthalmology, where we have come up with the guidelines as to when to initiate anti-TB therapy. And these guidelines are being used all over the world by our colleagues to convince the physicians to treat. And since it is difficult, now latest is on the World TB Day last week, we developed an app which was circulated all over as to COTS calculator. You just enter very simple patient details, phenotype, and it just tells you whether to give TB or not. For example, this is one of my last slides, that there's a very high probability amongst experts to treat this for TB. And this COTS calculator is now being circulated to all the members of all major societies. And very recently, as a part of TB elimination program, RNTCP has also decided to take this up and send it across to all its members so that the patients with ocular TB can be treated. So what could I achieve following these publications? Very simple recognition. Yes, I did receive and my colleagues did receive. There was a credibility because when you go to any forum with the publications behind you, people cannot question your credibility. They cannot say that you take the tap water and test for TB and it comes positive in India. You know, if you do not have those publications, they tell you that on your face in scientific meetings, but it gives you a lot of credibility. And finally, what is the most important is it makes a difference to the patient because otherwise these TB patients were being treated with triple immunosuppression. Serpiginous choroiditis is a recurrent disease, not responding to immunosuppression. You add 3 immunosuppressive, that is what we were doing. Now, what do? We just give them ATT for 6 months, no immunosuppression, minimal immunosuppression for the first few weeks, and the patient is cured of the disease. So I think that is what publication does. And I would like to thank Santosh, Dr. Rajan, Sharmila, and the entire team for the very kind opportunity once again.
Wonderful, wonderful, Vishali.
Thank you.
Very good.
What a lovely presentation it was. I think it was an eye-opener for all of us.
Thank you for sharing your work on ocular tuberculosis, ma'am. It was a fantastic journey. And just one question that I would like to ask you, ma'am. Like people who work on a particular area of interest, like you have worked so much on ocular tuberculosis, JB sir is working on intraocular inflammation, and Santosh Navar sir has a lot of publications on retinoblastoma. Does that work a lot? You know, like if you're working on a particular area of interest, and not only clinically you become an expert in that, and your publication potential also increases.
Absolutely. Like I remember for me in 1995, we did PCR and Dr. Biswas published a beautiful report of histopathology of the ocular TB. So I asked my teacher, Professor Amod Gupta, that what can we do so that we don't have to remove these eyes? Because we were not treating them with anti-TB drugs. He said, okay, there is something new, PCR, start doing it. So we did PCR, we found it positive, and no journal would accept it, you know, no journal. It came back from American Journal. I was very disheartened because I was, you know, first year kind of a resident. So it came back from 3 journals, finally it got into ACTA. And after that, we had difficult time. But now, with the grace of God, if I send something in TB, you know, it gets accepted. So I think that is the journey we all have to face through. The specific area is important, but for the youngsters, it really does not matter. Anything you see, first start publishing till the time you get a niche for yourself. You don't have to be super focused because you will not be in the beginning, but that should not be that you don't start.
Thank
May I
you.
make a comment?
Yes.
I think is the greatest satisfaction is that we made a difference to the treatment of the patients. Patients are benefited by our study, our research work all over the country. People are aware of it, this entity and the various manifestations, particularly multifocal serpeginoid choroiditis is of tubercular etiology, and a lot of eyes are saved now.
Yeah.
That's one of the greatest achievement, I would say, that which the Bishalian group has done.
Dr. Biswas was the first one in the country to recognize that ocular TB is a problem.
Any comments by Venkatesh, Rajiv?
Rajiv and Venkatesh.
No, really great talk, and I fully agree. The points which you told are very important. I still remember when we started our diabetic retinopathy screening, and we screened about 30,000 people. I was very happy, and my mentor, Dr. Tarun Sharma, told me tomorrow there'll be another person who will screen 50,000. So unless you publish it, you publish this 30,000, people will remember always. They will quote you. But the moment you just go on the numbers, things will not work. So I think creating evidences are important. The other thing which I realized over a period of time, though we tend to publish and we think that this literature would be read or it is in print forever, but somehow if you see the search which people do, it's usually lasts 1 year, maximum lasts 5 years. So this I was part of one meta-analysis, a global meta-analysis on AMD, and I was upset why my AMD study is not their population-based study. They said it was 7 years back. So this again gives the idea that you need to sustain. It's not like doing one paper is enough or one publication is enough to know, because then only what Madam told, the 3 criteria would be met, because you want people to read your article. It's not only publishing the article. If you want them to read, you have to be consistent enough, because people have they tend to search only last 1 year. Nobody looks 10 years back, except for big epidemiology studies like Wisconsin, nobody will look into the longer studies. So that's the reason if you see COTS is coming out with reports every few months, I would say every 2-3 months, I see a report. I think that is again one thing that you need to continue. You cannot just stop with one.
I think I just want to make a comment on Vishali's wonderful presentation. I think she highlighted the important factor that publication gives you credibility. When you go on a scientific podium and when you talk about publications, I think people will sit back and listen to you, not question you. That's one thing. Second thing also, as JB rightly said, I think publications probably have the basis for the treatment protocols also. I think, for example, the ocular tuberculosis study, what we have done, has given us an idea of what treatment protocols we have to give. And of course, the serpiginous choroiditis as well. So I think these are the direct, I would say, the clinical impact it can create. Because normally publications, everybody says publication is only for this thing. But publication has got, I think, a direct relationship to the clinical treatment as well also.
Absolutely.
I think Vishali's paper presentation was really outstanding, Vishali. Fantastic. Very good. Very good.
Venkatesh, sir?
I have nothing to add. I mean, it's an interesting discussion following the excellent talk. All are very valid. No, so I think it's good to deep dive on a topic. No, that is when you can really make a difference. Like I have done a little bit, at least in small incision cataract surgery. Initially, there were a lot of resistance. I mean, there is so much of volume being done or work being done. But when I went and dived inside to see there is no publication, then we had to come up with a lot of things like brown cataract, white cataract, black cataract, phacolytic, phacomorphic, high volume, randomizing phaco and SICS. And now if you see anywhere anything being quoted, it's nice to see your name on the stage, or you have been invited to write chapters or talk about it because you have shown that results. And that is how I think the publication takes you to the next level. You're making a difference locally, but also nationally and internationally. So that is where I think I also tell my team here, no, you can help 100 patients. You can do 100 surgeries in 5 hours. Fine. No, IJO has got a limitation of not more than 25 cases for 4 hours. But anyway, that is a new chapter we have to discuss later. But the point is, how will the world know that you can do high volume, high quality surgery? You have to publish. I mean, that evidence will help somebody else to again rethink certain things, because these evidences make practice differences. Now, some of our evidence related to environmental sustainability is kind of making practice differences across the globe. People are talking about waste in cataract surgery and things like that. I think some of this can go to a different level to change even practices, like how we have changed practice in tuberculosis, rheumatoid-induced uveitis, leptospirosis, and things like that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I just have one comment based on what Dr. Rajiv Raman said. We have a lot of research and methodology meetings conducted now, and many people have taken a lot of interest in research now. And they keep asking, like I have data from 7 years ago, 8 years ago. Is it worth publishing now? Raju sir was mentioning about that.
It is worth. Any data, anytime is worth. It is not like it's a old data. It's the way you look at the data. No, because every time you look at in a different way, like SM Dreams came up with nearly 120 papers. And every time we looked into that data with a different angle. You look into cataract at one side, and now like recently I'm looking at all like AI related thing in that. So every time it is the same small data, but your study question gets changed depending on what is the unmet need on the present day.
Thank you, sir.
Very good, very good.
So we next have the hero of the session, Dr. Santosh Ranawat sir. He's the editor of Indian Journal of Ophthalmology and IJO case reports. Like what Mohan sir said, he's taken IJO to a different level. I think PubMed indexing came under his tenure. He's one of the top 2% of world researchers, and he's done a lot of work on retinoblastoma. Previously, he was heading the Department of Ophthalmic Plastic Surgery and Ocular Oncology, and currently he's the head of Ophthalmic Plastic Surgery and Ocular Oncology in Center for Sight. He's done a lot of work in rhino-orbital cerebral mucormycosis, and I must thank you, sir, for your work on ROCM, which has helped a lot of patients during the mucormycosis epidemic. Over to you, sir. And he's received many awards. There's a long list.
We'll have another webinar for that.
Yeah.
For the awards.
Thank you, Mohan, for this wonderful organization. I think it's a good collaboration to have a journal and a state journal, national journal, state journal interfaced by a state society. So we began talking about publish and perish, and that led to a lot of pressure. Now it is publish and flourish, and hopefully it will lead to some pleasure. So when you want to publish, how do you find a good publication for your work? That's a very important question people ask. Where do I send my article? Well, now I've written it. Where do I send it? Publications give you discoverability, accessibility, and reusability, and it kind of gives you academic immortality, and you have to choose a good source for your publication. When you look at the number of journals currently, it's a jungle out there. There are hundreds of journals, but you have to fit your particular work to a particular journal. So what is a good journal? It's a very difficult question to answer. There are many definitions for a good journal, but these are some of the criteria that are considered. Journal of professional repute, if your colleagues and if your peers know about it, it should be ideally an index journal published by a professional society, like IJO is published by All India Ophthalmological Society. Similarly, ophthalmology is by IJO. So if it is published by a professional society and not by a publisher alone, that gives it a little more credibility than otherwise. Compact review time, if it's a very laborious 2.5-year review time, then your relevance is lost. So it has to be at least 6 weeks to 3 months kind of compact review time. The journal should be regularly published. If it's every month, first of each month, it should be published. It should have a reasonably good impact factor. And the decision should be quick. Publication time should be reasonable. Within 6 months from the time that you have submitted, or if it's last reviewed, it should be published. And your targeted audience should read the journal. Otherwise, you'll be barking up the wrong tree. if your article, for example, is on a particular disease which is relevant in one part of the world, then the target audience should be able to access it and read it. It also depends on what type of article is yours. If it's a photo essay or an image, if it's a surgical technique, or if it's a review article, meta-analysis, based on that, you choose your publication. But mainly there are three important factors. One is scope of the journal. Does it publish the kind of article that you have written, the reputation of the journal, and the turnaround time? You look at these three aspects mainly. What is scope? Scope means, does it fit the focus area of your manuscript? Does it regularly publish in good numbers the category of manuscript that you're aiming at? And does it serve your target audience? These are the three criteria to define scope. So you have to know your audience. Reputation is the number of years in publication. It has to be index journal that gives it a much better reputation. It is by a reputed professional publisher. Already mentioned, publication by a reputed professional society should have good impact factor or a side score, and your peers are aware of it. At this point in time, I'd like to bring in the concept of predator journals. Predator journals are journals which seek manuscripts for publication for a fee, and they don't necessarily get this manuscript reviewed. So these are necessarily from unknown publishers or less known publishers. Editors are not known to you. They solicit publications primarily for a hefty publication fee on which they may offer meager discount. Generally, no peer review is carried out, and by the time you submit it, maybe within a couple of weeks, it gets published in lightning speed, not indexed, and it is not on directory of open access journals. If you really want to know which particular journal is a predatory journal, then you can go to these two lists, which are online lists. They list all the predatory journals or potential predatory journals you should be aware of, because you lose money and your manuscript will have no impact at all. Turnaround time, this is the standard turnaround time that we look at. For peer review, it's about 6 to 8 weeks. Acceptance to proofs, about 4 to 6 weeks. Acceptance to publication, 3 to 4 months. And if your manuscript is of substantial importance, then you request for ahead of publication, ahead of print, online publication. So this is a checklist. I won't repeat it, but basically based on what I mentioned already, there's a checklist as to how do you want to select a journal. Now, what is important is you would have done research relevant to your geographic location or the disease that you are interested in, and the knowledge that you have produced is usable. So if that is the case, why bark up the wrong tree? Why publish your research in a journal which will not be accessed by your target audience, that is your peers? Mismatch is considered fashion, but finding the right match is very important when your manuscript is concerned. So why IJO? I'd like to pitch for IJO. Why should we publish in Indian Journal of Ophthalmology? Well, it is a reputed national journal. It is our reputed national journal. It is the official journal of All India Ophthalmological Society. 25,000 AIOS members access it, and they are your peers and friends. It's an open access journal. There is nothing to pay to get access to Indian Journal of Ophthalmology. It is free of charge world across. Anybody from anywhere in the world can access IJO without any charge. So for that reason, it has over 500,000 hits, online hits per month. That's a huge number. 500,000 online hits is considered a huge number for any journal, because they don't have to pay for it. They access it. And once they find the manuscript good, in their next manuscript that they write, they cite it. So being open access and being accessible actually increases your citation and does the impact factor. In fact, high citation can and is possible even if a manuscript is published in IJO. For many of the COVID-related articles, Deepak is here. He published one of the COVID-related articles. In fact, it was one of the first articles on impact of COVID on residency education was concerned. It has huge amount of citation already, 100+ citations. Similarly, many of the guidelines that we published during COVID have 200 plus citations. ROCM article has 100 plus citation. So journal is not a barrier for citation if your article is good enough. Peer group reads it. After all, you practice in India, and if you want your colleagues to read it, then you better publish in IJO, and Indian residents read it and they grow up reading your manuscript. So that's one more reason why you should publish. Well, it has a good pedigree, I would say, in terms of the past editors. You can see the past editors, including Professor Madan Mohan, GN Rao, Dr. Tara Prasad Das, Dr. B.K. Nayak, Tony Fernandez, Professor Ityara, and Dr. Nataraj. These are some of the cover pages of IJO. Each journal comes with an attractive cover page so that people pick up and read it. If your journal has a nice cover page, which is not generic, which is not dark blue, at least for the attraction that it gives, people open the journal and read it. Every issue comes with a cover page. And currently what we have started is we have started featuring our Indian giants in ophthalmology, which is an added attraction because many of our junior colleagues don't know who these people are. Whereas these people have really contributed to the development of ophthalmology in the country and the region. The first was Dr. P.N. Nagpal and then Dr. Badrinath. And Tales of Yore is a series of articles which celebrates legends in ophthalmology who are no longer with us. And this is Dr. V's cover page. This issue of Ophthalmology May issue carries his picture on the cover, and also a couple of articles by the Arvind group and also by us on Dr. V and his life. These stories are very inspiring. And maximum number of COVID-19 related practically relevant publications were carried in Indian Journal of Ophthalmology, which has given us very high citation. Each of these articles are cited substantially. 9, 10, 50, 100 citations. You can see 61 citations here. That was last when I took the screenshot, but right now there are many more. This is actually will increase the impact factor of the journal in the years to come. This COVID-related, ROCM-related article was done just in 2 weeks with 148 groups and so many authors. And this was cited as one of the best publications of the year by American Academy of Ophthalmology. We have a good website. We have social media presence, Instagram if you like. And that has led to a robust growth in the journal. Number of submissions increased from 575 in 2016 to 2,785 in 2021. That's a 500% increase. Increased submissions from India itself. Increased overall submissions 1,000 plus in 2016 to 3,823 in 2020, a 380% growth. Increased number of published articles 268 in 2016 to 1,424 in 2021, a growth of 530%. This is the growth pattern that we have. Citation pattern, growth in citations, 4,719 citations, whereas we started off in baseline 2016 with 1,400. Cite score has improved to 2.8 from 1.6, 1.5, 1.6 at the baseline, and citation, the impact factor has also increased to 1.848. This year we are looking at something around 2.5. Going by the cite score trend, we should possibly end up around 2.5 this year, whereas we began with 0.835. Publications in IJO, more importantly, have helped add 2,124 new unique Indian authors to the pool of Indian researchers in the last 6 years. This is 1/10 of AIO's membership. So this is something which is very nice, that 2,000 new authors have been added over the last 6 years. So what has it resulted in terms of country ranking? You can see in 2016, we published 795 ophthalmology articles, and we were 6th in country ranking. US, of course, led, followed by China, UK, Japan, Germany. Now in 2020, we've gone up to number 3 position, and our number of publications has increased from 785 to 1,907. And I'm proud to say that most of these were in Indian Journal of Ophthalmology. We are just 3rd to US, of course, which is unbeatable, 4,882, but we can definitely look at beating China in the years to come and go to number 2 position at least. So huge leap in global ranking for Indian ophthalmology. New initiatives, of course, case reports, which is on path of indexation. These are some of the cover pages of case reports. And what you can see is that even if it's not indexed, if it's a new journal, you can see publications have come from 24 countries all across the world, from all the continents, including Africa. IJO videos is a new initiation, and it is indexed from the first issue onwards. So thank you very much. I'm very grateful for the trust in Indian Journal of Ophthalmology. Hope and pray that all of you will choose IJO as your first choice for your the best of your works, not for something that is unpublished in other journals that you submit to IJO, but for the best of your work. If you choose IJO, it will definitely have more citations for yourself as well as for the journal, and ultimately you'll be doing good to the country and the journal as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. It's really a goosebump moment to see the progress of Indian Journal of Ophthalmology, and I think all of us are very proud about the fact, and we're very thankful to you.
Completely astounded, Santosh. 400% growth in the journal is something which is unbelievable, fantastic, incredible effort, and phenomenal. And I just wanted to ask you one question. The US has got less number of ophthalmologists than India. Am I right? They have got 3 times the publications. If I'm not right, if I'm not wrong.
Correct.
What is the reason for that? Are they all backed up by the pharma completely?
No. That is not the reason. I think their publication is a culture. In fact, to get into residency, they publish. Once they get into residency, to get into fellowship, they publish. When they become fellows, to get into a faculty position, they publish. And even private practitioners have gotten it. It's in their DNA to publish. So that's one. Second is a fleeting population of trainees. US gives opportunities to a lot of international trainees. And these are fleeting non-American ophthalmologists who study and train in US. For example, when I was training, I published 20, 30 articles. And I'm not a US citizen, but that's counted as an American publication.
Oh.
Right? Because it originates from an American institute. So there is a huge amount of fleeting trainee population that publish. So all this actually spike up the numbers.
Yeah. Santosh, one more point to add is that like 50% of doctors in institutes in US are clinician scientists.
Absolutely.
So they are they do only 2 days of clinical work, and the next 3 days is dedicated for clinical research and also basic science research and other innovations and things like that. So the institute practice is totally into research kind of practice in most places.
I think they have also more time in hand, apart from the clinical.
I think we need to improve like our mind setup. And what Santosh has done is a wonderful job. The face of Indian ophthalmology is the Indian Journal of Ophthalmology. And it has now become a matter of pride that our journal has got high impact factor, visibility, citations. That meetings we attend is that's very good. But the journal is that I feel is the face of our Indian ophthalmology, and we should all work for it.
I think they have more access to, right, sir? Access to data and everything. And even if we require a full text link, we cannot get it full text. But I think US people have access to full text.
So all universities have access. Now India doesn't lack access at all.
Now India doesn't lack. The full text problem is solved. That was a time when we used to ask librarian to get all full text, but now I don't think any of our fellows, PGs, whosoever wants a full text, it is available. I think the net has really, internet boom has changed, and there are a lot of sites where you can get it. So I don't think, but Santosh, hats off. It's really a great job bringing IJO to this level. It's really good and a good choice. What you said, it is one of the very good choice to consider. Even your nice research, which you think is a very good research, it's not important. See, I will tell you what was in my mind when I started doing research. I always say it's like your child. So I always compare with my kid, like your first choice is IIT. I always used to say that I'll put it at IIT. If not IIT, we'll go to the second one. No, that may be regional engineering colleges. If not regional engineering colleges, probably last come donation college. If even donation doesn't work, in-house publication. So though it used to be, but it takes a long time. Initial few papers I followed this thing. It helped me to some extent because I got a lot of reviewer comments. It improves your manuscript the moment it goes from one journal, a higher journal to a lower journal. It gives you some good comments to improve your manuscript, but it takes a longer time. Now, as I told you, you cannot wait for a long time that submit, reject, submit, reject. You need to select it wisely. And I think Santosh gave a good tip about that.
Fantastic, Santosh.
So,
If there are no questions, can we move on to the next talk, sir?
yeah, there's one quick question to Santosh. Sometime back, I think Santosh, you'll remember one of Sen Gupta's work on looking at how many AIOC papers were converted into publications. In up to 2020, 2000 to 2010 until 2015, how many were like published? So we found just less than 15%. So, but if you take RO submissions, almost 60 to 70% become publications. Some of the RO or academy, I won't talk about ASCRS and other subspecialty, but at least RO submissions. So what is your thoughts on how do we take some of this good work into publication?
Well, I mean, it is good work, no doubt. But when people present it at conferences, I think that is their endpoint, that they think is their endpoint or the highest.
Correct.
That a person who reaches the podium and presents, that's their highest point. So they don't end up writing it. In fact, Arup has a lot of problem in selecting articles for proceedings because AIOS has a rule that each presentation should be preceded by a full text article. And the kind of articles that go to AIOS are not publishable even in proceedings. So they don't pay attention to writing articles rather than they pay attention to making good slides and rehearsing and presenting it well to win awards. The focus is slightly different for us in India.
The mindset has to change.
No, we should bring it as a rule that all the theses should be published. All the PG theses should be published.
Yeah, I think
You should make an effort to publish.
Santosh, one idea, because I'm a part of ACTA Ophthalmologica editorial board. ACTA actually publishes thesis. So this initiative can be taken by IJO too, because they take an initiative of publishing the thesis too under the banner of ACTA Ophthalmologica.
We are publishing thesis, but we're not labeling it as thesis. We label it as original article and publish. And in fact, we help them a lot. In fact, I have ended up rewriting some of the articles to bring it to the standards of publication. But if the good data is good, then there is absolutely no problem publishing it. We help them rewrite most of the times.
I think you need a good mentor for that as well. All the chairpersons here are mentors for a lot of young researchers, I think. So it depends on that also.
Santosh, is there because if I'm not wrong, for the residents who are doing in the US, they have to have a certain number of publications. Am I right? Before they finish the residency. Do you have any rule like this in your country?
They also don't have a rule. They have a guideline. It's ideal to have it, but there is no rule that way. They publish it because their CV becomes better and they have a better fellowship opportunity. They don't have an entrance exam for fellowships. It's matching. So when there is matching system, the best ones get matched.
Yeah.
So how do you prove that you are a better one than the other? By having a better CV, right? Apart from everything else. If two things are equal, you can only show that you are better by having a better CV and better number of publications. So that's the culture that is caught up.
I think here also it's coming into. For example,
there also we have a rule, sir, that they need a publication.
It's an LVPI.
It's just an e-journal. It's just an e-journal. It need not be a peer-reviewed, PubMed indexed, or in a journal with a high impact factor. It's just an e-journal, so they have to publish.
Rajan sir, according to NMC rules of 2020,
yes,
all PGs must have one paper presentation, one poster, and one publication. but it's not an original publication. They can publish anything, either the case report or anything. So nowadays, NMC made it mandatory for them, but due to the COVID, they have given relaxation for this year, up to this year. Most likely from next year, it will be mandatory for all the PGs to have this.
Even for the last 2 years, they've been doing the e-journals. One publication is a must for them.
No, institutes like Shankar Nethralaya, LVPI, and Arvind, all the top institutes are taking publications into consideration when they are giving the fellowship. Am I right, Rajiv? JB?
Yeah.
Yes. When you want to compare one person
Just
with
see
another,
that
the CV, more publications, they probably give weightage to that. I think if you slowly get into that, I think I'm sure definitely the younger generation is definitely into publishing now.
Correct.
Yes, the newer generation, they are more, prone to, tuned to publications.
Absolutely. That is why we could add 2000 plus new authors. They're all youngsters.
Yeah, correct. I think it's a good sign.
Yeah.
So next we have a young researcher, Dr. Shashwati Mohan. She is a clinical VR fellow from Shankar Nethralaya. She's done a DNB in LV Prasad Eye Institute. She's a gold medalist in a DNB exam. She's also the fellow of IJO and a member of the Royal College of Surgeons. She has around 20 peer-reviewed publications. Over to you, Shashwati, to talk about literature, review and reference management.
Thank you, Dr. Sharmila. Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank IJO and TNOA for giving me this opportunity. As an early researcher myself, I think knowing how to do, I think I've not shared my screen, sorry. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is visible. Make it full screen.
Yes. It's full screen now, sir?
Yeah.
So as an early researcher myself, I think knowing how to do an efficient literature search and managing references is very important. So I would like to take this opportunity to touch upon a few things that have helped me during my residency and currently now during my fellowship while I'm researching papers. So research is basically research. And this search can be done during the initial methodology when we're trying to figure out how we can conduct our study, and then later while writing the paper itself. Literature search is a systematic and well-organized search from already published literature to identify good quality references on a specific topic, and it requires a thorough search of all types of published literature. The purpose is to avoid repeating the same research, to find out what other scholars are writing about the same topic, to learn methods and appropriate approaches that are suitable for your study, to learn appropriate theory, and to also find the lacunae in literature and see how your work can fill this lacunae. There are three types of medical literature. Primary is the case reports, original articles, and clinical trials. Secondary is review articles and meta-analysis, and tertiary is reference books. So there are multiple methods of conducting a literature search. We can do a protocol-driven one, where we do a hand search of the journals, or right now there are multiple databases available and we can do an electronic search. We can also do snowballing. We can do reference chasing from articles that we're already looking at and track the citations. And as well as personal knowledge based on existing theories and basics. So we know there are a lot of search engines available where we can do these searches, the most popular ones being Google Scholar and PubMed. There are also electronic sources of evidence-based databases such as Cochrane and ACP Journal Club, which can also be used. The steps in literature search, we need to first start with defining our question. We then identify relevant search terms. We develop a search plan. We test and refine the search. Then we select relevant databases and run these searches. And then we document and manage these search results. So I'll go through this one by one. So the first step is formulating the research question. This is the critical step, and we need to follow this finer technique to form a perfect research question. The idea needs to be feasible, interesting, novel, ethical, and relevant. A popular strategy which is followed is the PICOT technique. P stands for population, so we need to define a population. I stands for intervention. We need to decide what the intervention is. C is for comparison or control arm. So we have to decide whether we're going to compare with something else or not. O is what the outcome we're expecting. And T is what is the time frame that we're looking at. So this helps form a very well-focused question and can help us in our literature search. The next thing is to form keywords. These are major concepts or variables that are included in the search. And it's important to remember synonyms and alternative terms because these might be there in literature. And it's also important to use Boolean operators for expanding, excluding, or joining keywords. I'll be describing this later. So Boolean operators are simple words which can be used as conjunctions to combine or exclude keywords. AND includes the first and the second search term that you're using. OR includes either one or both of the search terms, and NOT includes the first term but eliminates the one after it. So the types of searches that we can conduct are keyword searches, where it contains your search terms anywhere. The mesh search, which I'll describe later. The field search, where search terms in the fields you specify, and you can combine these terms by using Boolean operators. So mesh is a medical subject heading. It's the National Library of Medicine's controlled hierarchical vocabulary, and it's used for indexing articles in PubMed. It contains more specific terms underneath more general terms, and is a reliable way to retrieve citations that use different terminology for identical words, and it indexes articles based on content. So for example, an article, underneath the article, you'll find a bunch of mesh terms, and some of them will have a star. The stars indicate that these terms are majorly covered in this article. For example, in this article, diabetic retinopathy and complications are majorly covered in this article, and by pressing on that, we can also find more articles similar to this. So how do we search for these mesh terms? I'm just showing the small video where diabetic retinopathy, and you put a square bracket and major. This will show you all articles where diabetic retinopathy is a major part of the article. It's a major mesh term with a star. We can also combine it along with Boolean operators and use 2 or more words. So we can also directly go to the mesh database. So in PubMed, there's an option to go to the mesh database. So in this, you can put multiple words, whatever you're looking at. So if you search for diabetic macular edema, you get macular edema. You can add this to the PubMed search builder. You can also search for another term like an NSAID, and you can also add this to the search builder. And when you look at all this, and you can add a Boolean operator in between, and this will give you a list of articles which have macular edema and NSAIDs as main part of the article. The mesh, this one also gives you subheadings. So if you choose macular edema with drug therapy, you get all the articles which have concentrated on macular edema bar drug therapy. So the other search methods include phrase searching, where in that exact order, there's no words in between them. It will filter out words that are not in that specific order. You can also use proximity searching, which allows for searching for words in the same sentences or within a defined number of words of one another. There are other ways such as using truncation, wildcard, adjacent, and parenthesis, which are also ways of searching. Some search tricks which are very useful in PubMed are these square brackets with TI, TIAB, etc. inside them. So showing this example, I'm searching for diabetic macular edema in the title and intravitreal in the title. So this will give you all the articles which have diabetic macular edema and intravitreal in the title. So this helps you in narrowing down the search very efficiently. There are also ways of going about, you already have an article with you, and this you can go scroll down and you can see a bunch of similar articles which recommends other articles on the same topic. This is also a useful way of narrowing down your literature search. PubMed now also has features to narrow down the literature search. You choose according to the article type, publication date, and also has advanced based on journal, age, etc. So the process of literature search is first you define the topic being searched and decide on inclusion and exclusion criteria. Then you identify specific keywords. You search electronic databases using a combination of keywords and Boolean operators. Then you remove duplicates. You read titles and abstracts and assess for relevance. Read full articles where relevant and assess using inclusion criteria. And repeat all these above steps to again narrow down your search. Scan reference lists for further articles. Do citation searches of most relevant work. And then organize material in preparation for analysis and inclusion in the search. So now you've done all the literature search. It's time for organization. And this is where reference managers come into play. So reference management systems are tools that help create and manage the list of references for research projects. It helps to organize citations into specific formats for preparation of manuscripts. There are many search tools and there are ways to download references into the reference management systems. So why do we add references? To give credit to others for their work, to add credibility to your work by showing that you've used valid information sources, to help show how your work is related to the previous work, and to avoid plagiarism, to help readers understand the context and find further information. There are multiple reference management programs that are currently available. The most popular ones being EndNote, Mendeley, etc. So based on the author's preference, these reference management systems can be chosen. There are multiple advantages and disadvantages of each one. This is all based on the author's preference and what they are comfortable with. But the basic functionalities of all these reference managers include importing citations from bibliographic databases and websites, gathering metadata from PDF files, allowing organization of citations within the reference manager database, allowing annotations of citations, allowing sharing of the reference manager database or portions with colleagues, and allowing data interchange with other reference manager products, produce formatted citations in a variety of styles, and working with word processing software to facilitate in-text citation and syncing references along multiple devices. So all the reference managers provide functionality to manually enter the bibliographic data. That is one way. The references can also be automatically extracted from online databases, and many references can also import references directly from a web page. So I sometimes am comfortable by manually adding citations. So how I do this is in PubMed, you can press on this cite action and you will see the citation. You can go to the format and multiple citation formats will be available. You can choose the format that is required by the target journal, copy it and then paste it into your manuscript. This can also be done in Google Scholar, where the site can be pressed under the article and then all the formats of the citation style come up. This can also be copied the same way, or it can be imported into your specific reference manager. So there are multiple citation styles which are available, and how to order and format this information and how to reference these citations in the main text based on number or author or year. This all depends on the publishing journal, and you have to keep changing the reference style if you're resubmitting to another journal. So how do you organize these references? You first identify all the content in the manuscript cited from other scientific publications, list all corresponding sources while preparing the manuscript, check for the reference style required by the target journal, number the list of references and match with the citation in the text, and check for the correctness of the citation style in terms of author, name, journal name, etc. And especially check for duplication of references. So by identifying which previously published article can be best cited in the manuscript, this avoids less reliable sources, avoid bias towards one kind of viewpoint and give a balanced literature in support and against your study, limit the number of references to meet the requirements of the target journal, and citation style should also be according to the target journal. So in conclusion, there are multiple options for managing your references, and a manual verification of references is important for accuracy, even if you're using the reference management softwares. Cross-check the software generated in the reference list and in-text citations so that you prevent avoidable errors in referencing. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Happy researching.
Thank you very much, Ashwati, for that wonderful presentation. As an editor, during the proof correction, we get a lot of corrections in the references, and there's a lot of secondary referencing which has been done, and you rightly spoke about it. Thank you, Suresh.
Great talk, Ashwati, very nicely presented. And I think for the budding researchers, the first slide was very important, that you do searching not one time. When you have a research question, when you are planning your study, you do a search, and that time your search is mainly focused on the methodology, how you want to do the study. By the time your study is over, it takes a couple of months. In that time, there is already some new literature on the same subject. So when you start writing, you again do a search, because definitely if you rely on your old search, it is an old paper. Definitely the reviewer will say that you missed some new things which have happened. So you again do a search. And if you are resubmitting to other journal, in that time, again, there is something, because nowadays there are so many articles which are coming. I think in each step, you need to do this literature search, and you will get some added information which you can add to your manuscript.
Important to use a reference manager, because that makes life so simple. The moment to change the order of your paragraph or sentence, if you have a reference manager, then everything will get carried on. Otherwise, arranging references manually is a big hassle. Rashmi, which reference manager do you use? Because these youngsters currently use a lot of nice reference managers. So can you give some tips as to what are the open source reference managers which you can currently use?
Where is Ashwanti's video?
She's hidden.
Yeah.
Good.
How daddy.
What are the open source reference managers do you recommend? Ashwin?
So, sir, I personally use Zotero because it's free to use,
Right.
and I also find it easy. These days, I'm also using EndNote as well because I managed to get it. But Mendeley, EndNote, and Zotero are the ones which are a little easy to use and more user friendly. One of the reasons why I'm also trying to use EndNote and Mendeley more is because when you're collaborating with co-authors outside of India, they are more used to using EndNotes and Mendeley. So when you are actually merging the manuscripts, it becomes difficult to merge the citations if different reference managers are used. But if I'm doing everything by myself, then I prefer to use Zotero because I'm just used to it and it is free to use as well.
Younger generation are using Zotero, but somebody who is very established, they have been always using EndNote and they
Yeah.
continue to use EndNote. They don't want to change over. So
Yeah.
that is a problem.
So the literature search has to be done in every stage, you know. So suppose you are sending it to another journal also, you need to do a literature search again, all over again, or how is it?
Update, just an update. What
Update.
in that time, you know, when you are changing one journal over to another.
Yeah. I learned a lot of things from Sashwanti today. Yeah. Seriously, an eye opener for all of us.
Yes.
Very beautifully done. Hats off to you, Sashwanti.
She's doing a good job. She's writing a lot of articles as well.
I know that.
Are there any questions from other chairpersons?
Want some comments from JB?
We used to do it, the handwritten one, like one survey of ophthalmology article, this all 300 references handwritten. There's and now the things has become so blessed you are to have this kind of reference manager system in Note and all. It was not that easy earlier, but we think we should take advantage of all this new.
I still remember some articles which you had done with JB long time back. Used to write in hand, you know. I don't know whether you remember that, JB. You remember that very much better than all of us. Yeah. It's become a lot easier.
Yeah, it's become a lot easier.
Lot easier, and also I think it's encourages more people to come in, because everybody always used to think it's very difficult to publish. There's always a mental block, self-doubt. I think it's all these talks and all these newer technology which is available with us, newer websites which are available with us, is making more people to come forward and publish.
Next, we have a senior associate professor from Regional Institute of Ophthalmology, Institute of Medical Sciences, PHU, Dr. Deepak Mishra, to talk about study designs. He has authored around 7 national books. He has 65 publications, of which 35 are in international index journals. And he currently holds the position of Chairman Scientific Committee, UP State Ophthalmological Society, the Honorary Secretary of US, and Joint Secretary of ISMICS chapter. Over to you, sir.
Before
Thank you, Dr.
Deepak
Sharma.
starts, I want to say one word about Deepak, a guy who is really so helpful, the greatest human being on this planet I have seen. Very helpful, and he's a very humble guy, very competent in whatever it is. There's a lot of very good work in BHU. I've seen it personally, and so many years I've been associated with him. Deepak, really, hats off to you.
Sir told
you,
me he's
sir.
not doing well, but he's been staying right from the beginning of the session.
That shows his
Suffering
commitment.
from common cold.
Yeah.
Sir,
Over to you.
sir, my slides visible?
Yes, this
Yes, sir.
is the full screen.
Now it's okay, sir?
Slide show karna padega.
Sir, here from my side is slides.
No, it's here not.
I think I have given slide to Sai. Sai, can you please?
Sai,
We'll do that. We'll do that.
yeah, please do.
Some issue with it. Yeah, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank TNOA and Santosh sir, especially IJO, for giving me this opportunity. There is no financial interest. Next. What is study design? It is usually said that we have to go for a set methods and procedure. This is a word which we would like to do something that set method and procedure is important to collect and analyze the data. And again, for to know whether which data is useful or whether it is data or not, if any numbers are there, if I can write 1, 5, 7, 10, it is just a number. But when we arrange them in a special format, either increasing or decreasing to so that we can get some information, it will be categorized as a data. So study design is something which make our data to analyze and collect. Next. This is just a small slide to know what are the various types of data. Data can be of quantitative or qualitative. Quantitative data is something which we can measure it, and the qualitative is data which gives us just only a grade. What is the difference, means high or low or anything of that. Next. Yes, now from here we start the study design. If we selected our study participants before they received any intervention or treatment or exposure, then this type of study is known as an experimental study. If we selected it before and if we put some exposure on it, means we have given something and find out its effect, then it is a type of study, or the first study to classify it is an experimental study. And if we didn't give any exposure, any treatment or anything, and we are going to conduct any study, then it will be an observational study. Next. Like here, you have seen that we are going to give know the IOP lowering effect of some of the PG analogs, and we given them these treatment. These treatments has given before, just at the selection of this. So this is the study which is comes under, we have given them exposure and then find out, then this is a experimental study. Next. Again, these experimental studies may be randomized or maybe not randomized. If they are given, all the participants have given equal opportunity to be put in the different groups, then it is known as randomization, and the study is known as randomized study. And if there is no equal opportunity, you can select anyone, or it is not decided which one goes to which group, then it is a non-randomized study. Next. Here you have seen this is a material method of a study in which all the 140 enrolled patients have been randomized into 4 different groups. This is an example of typical example of randomization in which none of the patient knows that they will go into which group, and there are various methods by which we can randomize this study. Next. This is an example of non-randomized study. Here you can see that we have to give just study whether we use fibrin glue or conjunctival suturing for a pterygium surgery. And this is, we didn't randomize them, like this patient we go for the fibrin glue, this patient go for the suturing. We just one by one, either we can go 2-3 patients continuously for the pterygium and 2-3 for by the fibrin glue, by the suturing. Then this is an example of non-randomized study. Next. I strongly recommend all of those young researchers or who are going must go through this author submission guideline. It is very short, and in IJO it is written so well that even within a fraction of second, 1 page, if anyone have any doubt like which type of article is his or her article is there, or whether what is the condition, whether they can label their study as randomized or non-randomized, just I recommend that simply go through the author's guideline and read at least one in the IJO. It is written very good. Next. Now coming to the another part in which we didn't assign any exposure, and these type of studies are known as observational studies. They again divided into two parts. One is analytical and another one is descriptive. Analytical study means there is some comparison group. Means if you are going to compare between two groups, then this is an analytical study, and descriptive studies means there is no comparison between the group. So if we assign comparison, then it is an analytical, and if there is no comparison, then this is a descriptive. Next, we have where while writing a paper or the method, we have to choose a proper adverb, like Dr. Previous speaker said about the proper mesh word. So here proper adverb is important to label your study. For the descriptive study, the common adverbs used is study, describe, or estimate. And while for the analytical study, where we are going to compare between two groups or three groups or how many groups, here the proper adverb used is determine, compare, or examine. Next. So here in both of the study, you have seen that we are just labeling it that role of biological cyanocryanate glue in corneal ulcer. There is no comparison whether if we can use the same glue in different corneal ulcer, means fungal, viral are there, then it will be a comparison. But here we just taken a case of corneal ulcer and put the glue. So this is a typical example of descriptive study. It is not an analytical study. And same here, what is the penetrating trauma audit in a hospital-based study. Here again, we don't categorize anyone or didn't compare. So it is both are the example of descriptive study. Next. Here, this is an article published in IJO. Here you have seen that we compare the conventional DCR surgery with the power implant DCR, and there is a word comparative study is used. And in both the group 1 or 2, we have a different parameters in which we compare the properties, outcome, basic, pre-basic enrollment features of the both group patients. So as and when there is a comparison, then it is a comparative study or the analytical study. Next. Now coming to the various types of descriptive studies. These descriptive studies, if again divided into two parts, if there is a participation group is individual, then it may be case report, case series, or cross-sectional survey. And if it is a population-based study, then it is an ecological study. Next. Now case reports. Case reports are something which type of, if we get any new case or rare case or something new finding in any of the case or some unique management is there, then we can publish it in a case report. It is useful, it has useful role in the medical research and good for the evidence-based medicine. But what is most important while during preparing a case report or the studies, have a proper documentation of each and every step of the case. If it is a surgical case report, then pre-surgery and post-surgery photograph is important. Next. This is an example of a case report published in European Journal of Ophthalmology. Here you have seen that retinoblastoma, association of retinoblastoma with post-axial polydactyly. Again, it is a rare thing, means retinoblastoma is usually didn't have association with post-axial polydactyly. It has association with other things. So it is published as a rare case. Next. Now coming to the case series. Case series is something in which these different typical type of cases can be put, they have same case scenario and they can be put together. And usually it consists of more than 3 and maximum up to the 10 they have included as a case series. Like here you have seen that disseminated cysticercosis in children. There are 4-5 common types of children having same type of pattern or scenario of disseminated cysticercosis. It is published. So if we have same scenario and same case report, but different numbers are there, then we can put it as a case series. Next. cross-sectional surveys are something, it is very much important that we can target whole population at one time. It is important that in both we have to prepare some questionnaire or anything which we can float on the individual or the pupil, and we can get it, the result of that survey. Next. Here, just Santosh sir has mentioned about this article. We did this survey on the impact of COVID on the residency training. And here from one survey, we can find out many questions and many results at one time. Means what is their habit or how they can spend their time, whether they feel, how their residency surgical training is affected, how their another training is class is affected. So these surveys can help us in knowing many factors by a single point of time, but again, it has to be cross-sectional. Next. Now coming to the another one, we already covered the experimental and descriptive. Another one is an analytical study. These analytical studies again divided, since there is a comparison group. So we divide on the basis of their timing. If we start with the exposure or the risk factor and disease will come later on, then it is usually comes under the cohort study. And if disease, we start with disease, like if we are going to find out the disease first, what is the diabetic retinopathy, outcome of diabetic retinopathy. At present, already patient have diabetic retinopathy, and then we go backward from there and find out what are the factors, are their blood sugar level in past, or glycosylated levels in past. This will be a case control study. And again, if we have both exposure and outcome at same time, then it will be a cross-sectional study. Next. Here you have shown the same thing. The case control study is usually a point where both exposure and outcome has taken place, and it goes always in the backward direction. So it is known as retrospective study. However, the cohort study may be retrospective, prospective, or both. I will explain later on. Next. So first, coming to the case control. Case control study is something which we have to start with disease. So it involves fewer number of subjects. The basic advantage is that it is very much suitable for the rare disease, since we have to know some type of poisoning, if you know the effect of some poisoning. So rare diseases are good to be covered under case control study. It is relatively inexpensive, but only problem is that these case control studies have higher chances of biases, because both exposure and outcome already occurred and we are at the level of disease. So there may be a cause, mostly the memory biased or data biasing will be there. Next. Cohort study. Cohort study is something in which we start with the risk factors or the initial treatment or whatever, and we can see the effect later on. So here we start with basically the risk factors, and these risk factors will have, when we start with risk factor, then there is less chances of biasing, and it requires some longer follow-up. Next. These cohort can be divided into three types I already mentioned. One is the prospective or the concurrent cohort, in which when the investigation began, outcome of disease has not occurred. Like if we are going to find out the prevalence of xerophthalmia in children suffering from worm infestation. So here worm infestation may lead to iron deficiency, may lead to vitamin A deficiency, and may lead to xerophthalmia. But here only we have started with the risk factor of the worm infestation. At present, didn't know whether all these worm infestations persons, children have xerophthalmia or not. So it is a prospective study, means moving forward. Next. Retrospective are the historical cohort studies. Here, outcome have occurred before the start of disease, means the investigator has to go back in the time and find out and track or trace the both study disease and this. Like we are going to do the audit of seropositive patient by the COVID-19. So here at present, we have lot of people having seropositivity because of vaccination or maybe natural infection, but we have to go in back and then categorize that, yes, this seropositivity is because of the natural vaccination, or this is having both, or this is because of the vaccine. Next. Another one is a combined, in which we have a prospective and retrospective cohort too. There is very simple example, like if anyone is having consuming alcohol since 1917 and we started the study in 1990. So these 20 years of the study is a part of a retrospective cohort in which the exposure occurs 2 decades before the start of these people may have some disease. And but if we follow up them for the next 5 years too, so apart from this exposure from 1990 to 95 is a prospective. So this is something in which we have a combination of both. So how the alcohol consumption can affect or lead to liver cancer or whatever the liver damage. This first 20-year decade is an example of retrospective, and upcoming 5-year defect is an example of prospective. So we can have a combination of both prospective and retrospective study. Next. So just coming to conclude these various studies, the various studies to be make a very simplified way, may be descriptive or analytical. In descriptive study, there is no comparison group. It may be case series, case reports, or the survey. In the analytical groups, there will be a chances of exposure for them. There will be a control group, and it may be a case control or cohort. Cohort again may be retrospective, prospective, or both. But remember that case control is always retrospective, and all the clinical trials are experimental group in which we assign exposure them first. Usually the drug trials are the vaccine trials, which comes under the experimental studies. They can go for the, either they have to do some preventive trials on the healthy patients, or the therapeutic on the patients, or the field on the community. So these are the 3 phases of the different trials. I'm not going in detail, but we have to know that whenever there is a assigned exposure, then it is known as an experimental trial. Next. So my take home message is that proper selection of study design is very much important. Most of the time when you have seen the articles, they have written a 24-year retrospective study or 13 months prospective study of these. So usually the journals, and they would like to highlight their study design in the main headings or the something which is important. And it is very much important to understand what is your study design before starting or planning your study. It is the most important plan, that you know that what you are going to do, because all your data collection and analysis will depend upon which design you would like to choose. Next. With this, I would like to thank everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for this detailed talk on study designs. I'm sure it will be very useful for all those people who are into research. Just a one question for you, sir. You were talking about cyanoacrylate glue. So suppose we use fibrin glue for tacantinons, or any other interventional trial where you use drugs like nitazoxanide or any other kinase inhibitors. You mentioned your study. So what do you mention in the financial disclosure? If at all the company is giving the drugs?
No, if company is giving, then you can mention that it is given by company. And if you are buying it, then there is no need to disclose it.
Because when we go for the ethical committee clearance, what the postgraduates feel is when they say that it is sponsored by an drug company, or
No.
they actually say that they get the drugs themselves in order to avoid. Otherwise, they don't get the ethical committee clearance. It's very difficult.
No,
So they are
because
facing difficulties.
NMC had made a rule that no drug trial or sponsored trial is taken for a thesis candidate. If anyone is writing his thesis or anything, then it will not be sponsored at all. And if you are writing your study or the trial, that this you are using the molecule, not writing your brand name, then there will be no issue of ethical. If I am writing only cyanoacrylate glue, then it is not a brand name. If I will write,
Generalized
say the name of some Reliance brand or another company which is marketing with like if here I am writing only Bimetoprast, then there is no issue of branding. If we write a particular brand of any company, then there will be issue in the ethical committee that you have chosen particular brand, why it is there. So it is advised that you have to write only the molecule name, and none of any research project or trial can be allotted as a thesis to any candidate. This is a strict guideline.
The NMC rules are very clear, and all our institutes should possibly look at it, because those rules are operable already. Since 2001, I think these are all operable. So any thesis done after that are to be compliant to these rules. Also, there is some relaxation time.
Yes.
Very good talk, Deepak. I think you opened up all the vistas as far as the study design is concerned. Very important to have a clear idea before you start any study. I think that is right in the beginning. You need to have the clarity on the whole study design. And halfway through, it's very difficult to change or modulate. So that's what I think is a clear message. Deepak, hats off to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next is our own moderator, Sharmila. Sharmila is a dynamic editor of the Tamil Nadu Journal of Ophthalmic Sciences and Research, and she's part of Regional Institute of Ophthalmology, Government Eye Hospital, Chennai. She's doing a great job as editor of TNOA Journal. It comes on time, it has a lot of good articles, and she invests a lot of time and energy into it. Over to Sharmila to talk on what is the importance of case reports.
Santosh, we also welcome Dr. Nirmal Frederick, Vice President of TNOA, former editor of TJOSR, who has been the main person instrumental in getting the TJOSR to this level, along with Sharmila. And thanks, Sharmila, for being part of this, and Nirmal also.
Thank you, President, for inviting. Thank you, Santosh. Yeah, over to you, Sharmila.
Thank you so much, Santosh sir, for making me part of the session and for the kind introduction. So my topic is power of a case report. Now we hear many ophthalmologists say, I'm a good clinician and a surgeon, and I make a lot of presentations in the conference. So why do I have to publish? Like what Santosh sir said, going to the podium is not the end point. And if you're not going to publish, all your clinical work and data is going to perish. Now, this case report might be at the bottom of the pyramid of evidence. Nevertheless, you should always remember the adverse side effect of thalidomide was just reported as a letter to the editor in any GM, and the impact that it created, the report actually revolutionized the way medical research was being done and drug trials were conducted. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and you can kickstart your publishing career with a nice case report. So the term publish or perish has been optimistically replaced by the term publish and flourish. So what does it give you? It gives you visibility in the scientific community. And if you have a good case and you've done a good literature search and you've managed it very well, and if you're going to publish it, it helps to disseminate the scientific knowledge to a wider audience. It also facilitates academic progression, and NMC recognized publications are important for your promotion as well. Now you basically have your idea, so you have to give shape to your idea. So what do you do first? You have to do a literature search, and I think Sashwanti has covered very extensively on literature search, how to do the literature search. So you have to search for the published articles, see whether the idea is a novel one, and if so, whether the publication will add further info to any pre-existing knowledge about the topic. So the various sources of scientific content, you will not get information from one single source alone. So Google Scholar can give you a lot of articles, but then all of them might not be peer reviewed. And I think this was covered extensively by Shashwati again. So you have to balance between PubMed, Scopus, and Web of Science to go balance between quantity and quality. So which journal to go for? I think Santosh had covered this part as well. So you have to make a short list, not a long list of journals. You have to make at least a short list of journals which you want to go for. So how do you go for? You have to knock at the right door. So how do you select? It should be peer reviewed, indexed, and it should have a good impact factor. And it should be preferably PubMed index. Go for those with no publication fee. I think he also gave you a website to check for predatory journals. Make sure that your publication doesn't go into any predatory journal. Choose one which is minimum review and processing time. I think IJO comes every month. TJOSR is a quarterly journal, and with this information, you can get information about all these peer-reviewed index journals have their own website, and you just have to go to the website to get the abstracting and indexing information. So that is the IJO website, and you can get the abstracting and indexing information. And they have the SIMAGO journal ranking as well. And the impact factor for IJO is, as quoted in the website, is 1.838. And this is a TJOSR website, and you just have to log in as an author to access everything. So the impact factor, what is this impact factor? The journal citation report is a product of Clarivate analysis. Previously, it was intellectual property of Thomson and Reuters. So it is based on the total number of citations. You have also the SIMAGO journal ranking, which is based not only on the number of citations, but also the importance of the journal. So these are the top 10 journals in ophthalmology with the SIMAGO journal ranking. So you have the IJO, the JAMA, the Survey of Ophthalmology, and the PJO case reports. When you're writing the case report, you should go through the care checklist very carefully. And when you're writing the abstract is the most read part of the case, and that is available online. And you have to give a brief summary of your case, why you're reporting it, and what is the main takeaway from the case. So go through this care checklist and prepare your case report accordingly. You can also have a timeline as to when the patient came, and the images, the investigations. The outcome and follow-up is again very important, and the learning points and conclusions can be given in a nice summary as takeaway points. References, again, as an editor, when we go through the proofs, we get a lot of correction in references. I think the reference part has been covered by Shashwanti. So when you're writing the manuscript, make sure you go through the instructions for authors in the website. Be very concise, stick to the word limit, the pictures. There is a certain resolution and the number of images given for each journal. So go through it specifically, and they do judge a book by its cover. So the title is important as well. That doesn't mean that you have to go for any fancy title. The fancy title might be attractive to the reader at that point of time, but then in the long run, it might not be very apt. So this is from the IJO case reports last issue, the current issue. So if you look at these titles are not very flashy titles, but very simple titles, but they have an impact. And again, you should go through the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors before you write your case report. So how to write it up? You should write it in a narrative readable tone, and the grammar should be good. Bad English can actually pull down a good paper. So it's very important to do a grammar check. You can use a Grammarly for doing a grammar check. You should also go through the Equator guidelines. That will give you a checklist again. So that checklist will help you with the, if at all you have missed any particular point in the case report, that will be highlighted. And so, I'm just focusing on one particular point. Suppose you are talking about the diagnostic methods. It gives you the lab investigation, imaging surveys, diagnostic challenges that you faced in diagnosing the case, reasoning, and the differential diagnosis, prognostic characteristics. So this is how it goes. And when you go through these two checklists, the care checklist and the Equator, it gives you a proper information, and you will not miss anything. So what are the types of cases that you can report? You can report a rare case. Now, this is a case of intraocular ciliary body tumor, which is a very rare case and has been reported in BMC case reports. It can be an unusual presentation, a common case with a challenging diagnosis. Now, hemophilia is not a very rare case, but blood staining of cornea has not been reported much. And procedures in a hemophilia patient with blood staining of cornea, we could just find 2 reports. And then when we did a triple procedure in a blood stained cornea, we reported it. So you can also publish a surgical technique, and anything less than 10, it only qualifies for a case series. You cannot publish it as an original article. So how it works in your hands, you can probably go about publishing it. So that's the Tuckentino spatchcraft for corneal perforation. And whenever you publish such an article, it's important to quote the landmark papers, and definitely you have to quote the papers of Dr. Rasik Vajpayee, Dr. Namrata Sharma, and Dr. Sayan Basu. Many times we get publications where the landmark papers are not quoted, and then the reviewers suggest that these papers are important. This should be your first references. And when you have many images like that, it's important to give part labels. Many times the part labels are not given in the legends, and the declaration of patient consent is very important, and you have to give that. And make sure that the identity of the patient is not revealed, and even the hospital number should not be included. De-identify should be very important. During the early months of the coronavirus pandemic, the phrase was very popular, stay at home and save lives. And some young researchers like Dr. Presna, Dr. Shruti, Dr. Bharat, Dr. Kirandeep have taken it literally, have taken it in the literal sense, and they've come out with a flurry of publications during the COVID pandemic time. And it's really a proud moment for TNOA to have its members publish, especially the section editors publish in high impact journals like IJO and other journals. Now, Christmas tree cataract has been reported previously, but what is novel in this is the shine flag images in the anterior segment OCT images of the Christmas tree cataract. That makes it novel. And again, like what Santosh said, many publications on COVID-19 and ROCM were cited. And so current clinical trends is always no, so ophthalmic manifestations in COVID-19, ROCM, or any vaccine-related complication, ophthalmic complication, that's important to document it. And if the editor feels that it is of relevance and this particular case report is scope, you can even expedite the publication. So that is a publication from the R11 group, bilateral central little vein occlusion in neonate with septicemia. So the images are documented well, and the intervention has been mentioned properly, and the outcome is good. So that's why it has found its way into a high impact journal like Ocular Immunology and Inflammation. And one more thing I would just like to say, I think Shashwati told that, I'll just want to emphasize on that. If you want to quote this article, if it is a PubMed article, it's very easy to cite. So it is just a formatted reference. You just have to click on this box cite, and this appears, and you just have to copy and paste it. In case it's not a formatted reference like PubMed article, then you have to place a reference in the Vancouver styling or whatever styling the journal requires. For us, it is Vancouver style of referencing. So it goes like this: reference number, the authors, the title, the subtitle, the edition, the place of publication, publisher, and the year of publication. Before you make your submission, make sure that there is no plagiarism. So you can use the Authenticate software and do a plagiarism check. And our journals by Alters Clovers also have the Authenticate software incorporated. There should not be any double submission, and you should not submit to multiple journals. There should not be any authorship conflict as well. Submission process, go through the submission process again, go through the website again. It makes sense to go through it again. Have it proofread by a consultant. You should have at least 2 to 3 proofs. A grammar check is very essential. Do not spend more than a week on it. If you're going to leave it on a desk, let it be the editor's, the review's desk, and not your desk. A good covering letter is helpful. And if at all the reviewer suggested revisions, make sure that you do the revisions properly, address every concern, and then there's a high chance that your article can get accepted. So please go through the websites, and even if it gets rejected, do not worry. There are a bunch of journals. Making the first million is always difficult, and getting the first 10 publications is going to be a challenge. Thereon, it's going to be an easy part. I think from rejected to accepted is a story for every researcher, and each one of us will have their own stories. A professional writer is an amateur who didn't quit, and that's what you have to have in mind. Perseverance is a key. Names can be messy. There can be 1,000 Sharmila. So how do you identify? You can have enroll in the Open Research and Contributor ID. You can have a unique ID. You can also enroll and log in into ResearchGate. So that gives all your publications under one roof. The first couple of publications are what you have to submit. Otherwise, you know, the portal identifies the publication and asks whether you're the author, and you just have to click yes. So you have all your publications under one roof, and you can also get full text links from other authors. You can request them for full text links. So take 2 points. In the interest of time, I just rushed a bit. A case report is definitely significant. It can change the way we practice. Report anything that is different. Documentation is the key. You have to go through care and equator guidelines. Make multiple drafts and revise as the reviewers are suggested. Never give up. You don't have to be an Amazonian or from John Hopkins to publish. All you need is perseverance, and you need to have a good mentor. So have some mentors. Take help from people who are into research and publication for a very long time. And please register on ResearchGate and ORCID. That's the core team of TJOSR, and each one has contributed to the journal's progress in an immense way. Thanks to Sengupta's Research Academy for the online teaching modules. Thanks to Santosh Anwar sir for this wonderful collaboration. And I would just like to conclude my talk and to Nirmal sir for giving us a platform, and that's why TJOSR is nicely taken off now. I'd just like to conclude with a quote: "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an art, but a habit." So start right now, and we look forward to seeing your work in our journals. Thank you.
Fantastic. Sharmila,
Thank you, sir.
you are better than the best. I think you should continue as an eternal editor for the TJOSR. That is the president's wish. Eternal editor, because nobody can do a job better than you, I tell you. And I thought Nirmal was the best. That's why I said better than the best. But you have surpassed him. With the due respect to Nirmal.
With all his guidance, sir. With all his guidance.
I know.
Thank you, Mohan.
Yeah.
I wish your wish comes true.
Yes.
Thank you, Sharmila, for that wonderful talk and taking TJOSR to scale new heights. In fact, today is a nostalgic day for us because on the same day, 5 years back, we renamed this journal for ROI registration and indexing. So exactly, we have completed 5 years since then. The journal has taken various avatars and forms, and now it is in the good hands of Sharmila. And thank you, Sharmila, for that wonderful lecture. I think we are running short of time. We have 3 more talks to go. We quickly move on to Dr. V.G. Madanagopalan. Dr. Madan is a VR surgeon and part of the editorial team of TJOSR. Welcome, Dr. Madan. He'll be talking to us about how to write an original article.
Welcome, Madan, and another dynamic guy from Salem. He's been doing tremendous work. Thank you, Madan, for being here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Hope my slides are visible, sir.
Yeah, but you are audible. Yeah.
I'll come closer to this.
So please come close to the mic, Madan.
Yes, sir.
Little louder, Madan.
Yes, sir. One second. Just give me a... Okay, I just switched off the fan so that I'll be a little more audible.
You're audible.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Now, at the outset, I'd like to thank TNOA, Sharmila ma'am, Mohan sir, Santosh sir, Nirmal sir, and IJO for this wonderful opportunity. And I'm so happy to see most of my mentors from RIO, SN, and Arvind here. I've learned the trade from them, and it's really an honor to be speaking in front of them. So, insofar, we have seen various aspects of scientific publishing. Now, we'll move on to one of the most important facets, how to actually write an original article. So choosing the topic of research, designing your study, thoroughly checking what's already been done, and what are the gaps that you are aiming to fill, getting the study done, collecting the data. These are all presumably done at this particular point. My very brief talk is only about how it should be presented as a manuscript. In writing an original article, this IMRAD format is more or less the standard. We start with introduction, we describe the methods, we present the results, and then have a discussion on the subject. Of course, the title and abstract will come in. But when writing the manuscripts, your authors usually follow a different pattern. They start with the method section, and that's because this is a section that you can complete even as the project is underway. You do not need the data or results to write this. We only need to write what is being done. Next, when we have the final data and spreadsheet, we make our charts, tables, and diagrams. Thereon, the results section can be completed. Now we know what our data is telling us. Based on this, the discussion section is completed. And in all honesty, only at this stage, the authors themselves know what the paper is looking like. So this is an appropriate time to write a short introduction. Finally, the abstract will take shape. As mentioned, the methods section has to give a clear overview of what was done in the project and how it was done. There are some mandatory info that we have to include. That includes the Institutional Ethics Committee clearance, declaration of Helsinki, consent from the participants. If you've got a clinical trial registered, the name of the registry and the register number, where, when, and the duration of the study has to be mentioned. Clearly mention the inclusion and exclusion criteria that were used. If we have taken controls, what were they? It's usually presented in the form of flowcharts, and that will give a nice pictorial representation to our readers. And then variables have to be measured in standard units. They have to be mentioned. The machines used, the models and make also have to be mentioned in the method section. And as ma'am was just mentioning, it's good to follow the equator guidelines as well. In statistics, one again needs to mention the methods used and the software used. The idea of detailing everything in the methods section is that anyone else with the same tools should be able to replicate your study. Overall, in the methods section, I find it easy to use a few subheadings within the section itself. I'd like to start with participants, and then my next para will say data collection. And finally, I'll speak about statistics. So right, we're done with the method section. We move on to the interesting part. We have our data in hand, and it looks something like this. This spreadsheet is where we usually start. Now, this is our story. The story that we see in a few words and numbers in different cells in different rows and columns. This story is going to find its way into my manuscript. And it's up to me to make my story intriguing so that people will be interested. For that, I have to distill the essence of this spreadsheet and present them in neat little tables. Now I have space for probably 4 or 5 tables and figures combined, so I'll have to use that space judiciously. I'll try to bring data into rows and columns like this. Continuous data and categorical data have to be presented differently. The editors and reviewers are really interested in our tables. So how succinctly has the data been presented? Is the data easy to read and understand, independent of text? Do your tables actually contribute to the conclusions that you have derived? One needs to remember all this when formatting and presenting data in tables. Next, 1 or 2 figures would also help to convey what we've done, like this clinical picture or schematic diagram on the left, or you can put your results in the form of charts like this box whisker plot on the right. So you'll have to keep the resolution optimal. Give a detailed legend describing subheadings, arrow marks, and abbreviations. Tables and charts we need to remember that tables and charts cost space, and in publishing, space is money. So authors need to respect that fact as well. Once we have our tables, we begin to write the results section. A few general rules in this segment are give most of the data in tables. Do not repeat what you've already mentioned in the tables. Point out relationships and trends. Do not give conclusions in the results section. If a sentence has to start with a number, please spell it out. Try to give a general picture first with the demographic and baseline data. And then if you have groups, compare them based on the baseline data. Next, you can compare the groups based on the follow-up data. Finally, you can talk about trends, associations, correlations, and regressions. So the results section, include when you finish it, would probably be 3 or 4 paragraphs long. Then we come to the discussion part. This section gives me the most freedom, but again, I should not overdo it. I'd like to discuss what my data directly proves, not what it could prove. My conclusions and interpretations should be supported by data. I should not digress. I should not extrapolate conclusions based on data from my references or other articles, because my particular study may not have the relevant data. I can compare similar research. I can probably offer explanations if my results are different. I'd be anticipating what my readers are thinking. What do they want to know when reading my article? And I'd like to answer those questions. Using a reference manager greatly helps. There was a discussion on that. This is especially true when I'm trying to reformat my article for another journal, as each journal has their own reference style. So before concluding, I'll not forget to honestly discuss the limitations of my study, however great it may be. It's better to be specific and mention what can be improved upon in future studies. Conclusion can be mentioned as the last paragraph. Some journals allow for a separate section also. I'd like to end with my main findings. Do not travel too far from what the data actually is saying, and I can give a final take-home message with implications. Now, it's odd that we talk about the introduction part of the manuscript after writing the conclusion, but that's how it usually works. Because the intro section is like, your opening line in a conversation when meeting someone new. You want to state your purpose and you want to state it really well. And for that, you in the first place need to know what your study has concluded, what your paper is like. You know the final shape of the paper, and then you write the introduction, you'll be able to write it well. So that's why it comes after you've almost finished writing your paper. State what is known, what is unknown, and in that domain, what is unknown has to be stated next. And from then you build up to your research question. We use the introduction section to gain attention. Keep it short, 2-3 paragraphs would suffice. Most important thing, usually there are abbreviations throughout the manuscript, and they'll be finding first mention at the introduction section, and it's important to expand abbreviations at first mention. Next is the abstract section that can be free form or structured based on your journal. Again, expand abbreviations at first mention. Usually people have trouble with the word count when getting the abstracts right. In that case, what I usually do is I let it rest for a while, and then I come back later. I'll be able to pick out a few phrases or a few sentences that are a little superfluous, and I'll be able to eliminate them. Framing proper keywords is important, as we've just seen. That's how your article is going to get noticed. So I like to put myself in the reader's shoe. What will be the keywords that I'll type if this article has to show up? So those have to be my keywords. Finally, the title. The title and abstract are the calling cards for our article. These two areas are the ones that are going to be most viewed as they show up on search engines. So keep it simple, keep it specific. Avoid rhetorical questions, avoid giving conclusions in your title. So I prefer writing a title at the start. I reassess and refine many times as the paper takes shape until I feel that a particular sentence is catchy, short, but detailed enough to convey what I've been doing. To conclude, I'd like to reiterate these few points. Respect the journal's, editors, reviewers, and readers' time. Stick to word, table, and chart limits. Do not repeat information. Use simple and clear language. Do not overreach. Be clear about the research question that you set out to answer. Give a clear, concise answer to that. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity and for your patient audience.
Well, thank you very much, Madan. You always make it very simple. You're a good orator, and you really simplified everything for the young researchers. And I like the way you kept stressing that you have to expand the abbreviations, because many times we get the proofs and then the publisher is a non-medical person, and when STOCT is just expanded as standard deviation OCT. So it's very important to expand them in the first instance. And with regards to statistics, you already keep telling that it's not important to know the statistician. You just have to get, statistics part, you just have to get the data ready, and the statistics part, and it just takes 5 minutes. So when do you recommend seeing a statistician when a PG is doing the thesis?
Ideally, a statistician should be seen at the stage of designing the study, madam, so that he gives you an idea of what data is to be collected and how it should be put in an Excel sheet, so that the work at the end of the study becomes really easy. As I keep mentioning, it takes less than 5 minutes to complete the entire stats.
Lovely, lovely, Madan. Lovely. I would like to acknowledge the work done by Madan for the TNOA, especially with the Publish and Prosper, the project what we are having in the TNOA. It was actually Madan's brainchild. He only gave me a lot of inputs on this, how to go about this Publish and Prosper. It's become a huge success. I encourage many people to come forward. And thank you very much, Madan, for the wonderful input. Yeah.
Are there other?
Go to the next talk.
Any other comments from?
Rajiv is there?
I think is the research question.
Yes, sir.
Is a very important part of the original paper. to set out the good research question and then design a study after that. So you need to do a lot of literature search. You need to that the confusion zone where you can get the research question, and then you can design the study. That's the original case series.
Very nice talk, Madan. Very nice talk. And I think that slide is very important, though it is embroidered. But when you start writing, you don't start with introduction. I think that is very, very important. The young researchers who are seeing should see that. You don't start from there. You start from your methodology, which you are doing, and then you go to the tables, figures. I think that is the key of this talk.
Got it from you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, he keeps saying that you mentored him, and in his publication journey, you helped him a lot.
No, I think that gives, in the initial stage of your publication, you start writing introduction, and then you really don't know at the end. Once you analyze, your results are totally different. And then, so it's always better to write your methodology, do your tables and figures, do your analysis, write your results. You know by the time what you're talking about. Then start writing your introduction. That makes more sense. I think great job.
Venkatesh sir.
Yeah, Madan, do you have any tips for our residents to concise their thesis into original article? Because that is where I think they are all caught. They have done a very good work. They have done a good thesis. It is binded into a book. How do you concise a bigger version to a smaller version?
I think they might have to take professional help, sir, because at their stage, because their goals are different. We were just discussing, just as somebody's journey ends at the podium, probably our postgraduates, their journey ends with the examination and getting to be an ophthalmologist. So probably during their residency period, we can keep inculcating the habit in them and insisting that even after they move out of the institution, they can push this and get this published. Probably a group can get together and guide these people on getting it done.
I think Venkatesh sir, you should be telling about that, because there are a lot of research publications from your institute, and you're the one who encourages a lot of young researchers. So you should be speaking more about it.
No, that is true, but it's a kind of a challenge, because the problem is which comes first, the chick or the egg. On either side, you see the problem. They say we are not being guided properly. The seniors are busy with clinical work, and we don't have proper guidance. On the other side, I see that they are not prepared very well for whatever the thesis. They have not done a proper research methodology work. Somewhere you need to get a balance between these two. So that is where I think we need to find a role of clinician scientists who can spend more time on doing this in at least this part of the country. So that's a kind of a balance which we are trying to bring in Aravind also, and more in Pondicherry. We are giving at least identifying few people to be clinician scientists, giving them more time so that they can sit and guide some of these young residents and fellows. Because that guiding is very important. That mentoring is very important. If that doesn't happen, many of this will only stay with podium and even as just books in thesis. I still tell a story of a DNB evaluation. When I went to Delhi, one of the table was shaking. So I kept asking the chai fellow who comes every hour, this table is shaking, can you help me? So I thought he'll help me by putting something. So he brought a book and put it under the table. Then I looked at it. It was one of the thesis, an orthopedic thesis. So I always tell this. So if you're not going to publish this is what is going to happen in a DNB office. No, not to offend the DNB office, but what to do with all those books then? No, every year there are like 3,000 books lying there. So at some point, at least if you publish it, it's going to stay lifelong somewhere valuable for somebody to search in the future.
I think one of the challenge which is there with the postgraduates is they have the timeline only for the thesis. Like they focus. So though at SN, we have created a thesis monitoring committee. I'm part of that, and we meet every 2 months. And I think the biggest challenge is that they complete everything on time. because they have their initially I was thinking that I'll push them that when they are submitting thesis, by the time your draft also should be ready, but I think it is difficult. It becomes much difficult because if they stick to the time and finish everything at time, I think that becomes a problem now. But as Madan was rightly telling, that probably after that is something, once they finish their exams and then push them to write that. I think that's because they are full of bubbling with knowledge at that time and they are fresh. I think that is something which can be
I'm
thought
trying
of.
to do that now, sir, with a few of my postgraduates at RSN E Road. Once they're finished and gone, then they're mentally clear, they're free, they have time to do,
Yes.
and that is when a little prodding will help to take it to a publication stage.
I think the mentoring is very important, as Venkatesh rightly said. Then we need to mentor them and probably take them in the right direction. And only clinician scientists can do that. So we need to spend some time with them and probably take them, because many people think that once you publish a thesis, submit the thesis to the DNB or the or whatever MS or whatever it is, and pass the exams, it is all over. And so they are in a release phenomenon, like a mood. So yeah, it's like that. But we need to tell them that we need to publish. So we have made it this thing in Rajan I Care. There are all the theses you need to publish. So we have made it as a rule. So you need to publish. You have to make all the efforts to do that.
Thank you very much, sir. In the interest of time, I think we'll move to the next talk. We must have seen her name in many publications, Dr. Rashmi Deshmukh. This is the first time I'm seeing her, and we are really proud to have her in our TNOA session. So she completed our training in ophthalmology at JIPMER, Pondicherry, and she's received the University Gold Medal. She's finished her fellowship in refractive surgery, cornea and cataract surgery at Narayan Nethralaya, Bangalore. She has done a clinical research fellowship program in cornea and ocular surface at the University of Nottingham under the mentorship of Professor Harminder Dua. She is currently a consultant in LVPI. She has many publications to her credit, and she's received a lot of awards as well.
Thank you, Rashmi, for being here.
Thank you so much, sir, for the opportunity. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. I hope that is visible.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd like to thank TNOA and IJO for the opportunity to present this topic. I'm going to speak on how to write a review article. Sorry, it's not going ahead. Okay, yeah. So why should one write a review article? It's a great thing for a young investigator to do, although it involves a lot of work, like diving into the most recent literature in your field. But it also gives you a lot of practice on reading papers and helps synthesizing and organizing large amount of information on a particular topic that you are writing a review on. It is a service to the scientific community because it is your review article becomes a go-to point for a particular topic. It helps to clarify the knowledge and also explains the contradictions between various articles that are published and creates a consensus. That is the aim of writing a narrative review. And it also helps advance your career because review articles are some of the highest cited articles. And it also helps you master the topic and develop synthetic thinking on the topic that you are writing on. If one is not able to publish original work, then it also adds to your publications and your CV. This is particularly relevant in COVID times because I think when there was lockdown and people were not able to do any original work, review articles helped people build their CV. Now, what is the goal of a review? The goal of a review should be to synthesize the recent and primary literature on one particular topic. These days, there are a large number of papers that are coming up from all over the world. And for a review article, we just need to pull together and summarize what each important article says. It should give a good sense of the field that you're writing on, including what we already know about the topic and what is new and what we do not know about the topic. Also, a review article addresses controversies involving treatment or diagnosis of particular diseases, for example. And at the end of your review article, the bibliography gives a comprehensive list of all the articles that are published on the topic that you are reviewing. So there are two types of review articles. There is a narrative review and there is a systematic review. A narrative review is a qualitative review and just summarizes a topic. It does not have any methodological approach, and it is essentially just a critical analysis of literature. Whereas in a systematic review, there is a specific research question to be answered. So there is systematic and explicit methodology to identify, select, and critically evaluate all the results of the studies included in literature review. So for example, if there is a topic on which 5 different articles are published with 5 different sample sizes giving different kinds of success rates and failure rates, then a systematic review would essentially just analyze the results of all those 5 articles and give a consensus. In the interest of time, we would be focusing on just narrative review in this particular talk, starting from how to choose a topic up to how to get it published. So when we want to choose a topic for writing a review, it should be a topic in which you are interested and you know enough about. Writing a review requires a lot of literature research and a lot of reading, so it will be very difficult if you choose a topic which you are not interested in. Secondly, it should be a current and well-established topic, and there should be enough number of articles for you to research and review in the narrative review that you're writing. And again, it should also be of interest to the audience. So for example, you can sometimes choose specific aspects of a broad topic, like penetrating keratoplasty becomes a broad topic, but there could be reviews on specific aspects of it, like pediatric keratoplasty or infectious keratitis following keratoplasty. This is one example. Then another thing is a topic that is already established, but after every few years, there are some new developments on that topic. So you could always update any topic of your interest and write a review on that. Or you could choose an interesting topic where nobody has written a review yet. And then that article becomes like a go-to article, also helps in increasing the citations. So once you have chosen a topic, literature search is your next thing. This has already been spoken about by the previous speakers, but authentic literature sources would be PubMed, Embase, and Google Scholar, or any previous review articles. Sources of information like Wikipedia and blogs or magazines or social media are not encouraged when you are writing a review. Search terms, again, have been covered by Dr. Sashwanti. Just to give an example, if you are writing a string of characters like corneal transplantation or corneal transplant or keratoplasty, they all mean the same thing, but the results, the number of articles that come up in the results are different. So this is just an example to show the importance to cover all the possible terms that you could use for your topic. Again, Boolean operators should be judiciously used. This was again covered by the previous speakers, and the mesh terms as well. Once you have done the search of literature and pooled all the articles that you want to include in your review, critical analysis is important. So you first include or exclude the articles based on the importance of those articles, including sample sizes and the impacts those articles have made. It is a good idea to group the articles according to the topics that you would want to cover. And it is always a good idea to, it helps me if you just deconstruct your primary topic into several ingredients and then group the articles into them. Sometimes some articles might point out some outlying ideas which could establish a significance to an overall debate going on around the topic, and it adds a new dimension to it. And it is also important because sometimes it is not in-depth examined before you write a review. Then again, the key results, the suitability of the methods, and the interpretation and impact of the conclusions of those particular articles should be always considered. And lastly, it is important to use high quality evidence. When we talk about quality of evidence, there are different levels in evidence-based medicine. The most important ones being systematic reviews and randomized controlled trials, after which there are cohort studies, then case controlled studies, and then case series. And last but not the least, it is case-based reasoning or some expert opinions or commentaries. Once you have analyzed all your articles, next is to decide on a journal. So there are multiple journals that accept reviews, including systematic and narrative, but some journals would accept only on an invite-only basis, means the journal invites you to write an article, but there are certain journals in which you can send a proposal saying this is an article, this is a topic that I would want to review, writing a cover letter and a proposal about which I will talk. So when you are considering the journal where to submit, impact factor becomes important. Readership of the journal is again important. The topic should be read by those particular people who read that journal. And then perspective of the previous articles published in that particular journal also becomes important. Again, like I mentioned, the policy of journal, whether it is a by invite only or a proposal can be sent there. Then inviting co-authors is one step which always helps, because it helps give expertise that is necessary for the manuscript development. So if you think that there are certain people who are experts in your particular field, collaborating with them would be a good idea. And then they also sometimes make a substantial intellectual contribution to the manuscript. The only thing is that they should be willing to devote time to writing and reviewing the manuscript that you're writing, and also participate in the group meetings, so that the timelines are met and the review gets completed in time, essentially. Then how to write a proposal. For example, if you have identified the journal and you think it is not an invite only basis and you are able to write a proposal for that and your topic can be accepted there, then first there is a cover letter that you write in which you include why your topic is worth reviewing, and has there been any previous review on the topic? If yes, then what is your review going to add to the existing literature, or what is different from the previous review? And then it is a good idea to include the outline of your review. Some journals actually require you to do that, and some references. Usually it is not important to include all references, but at least the major ones or the high impact articles need to be included when you are just submitting your proposal. So this is just an example of one of the outlines that I had made for one of these reviews that I had written. So for example, the review is on laser-assisted keratoplasty. So you just start with a small introduction, then types of laser, then excimer, femtosecond. So this is what I meant when I said you deconstruct your topic into smaller ingredients, so that it just becomes very easy for you to categorize your articles and give it a good flow. And then in the end, you include references. Then comes the drafting your manuscript for a narrative review. So you follow the outline that you submitted to the journal now. Again, initially there is an introduction which includes the purpose of the review and a brief overview of the overall problem that you are addressing. Your introduction should also include the available literature, including some of the historical data, and then give that what your article is going to add to this existing literature that you have just introduced. And the reader should get a sense from what the reader is going to gain when they read your complete article. And again, as has been just previously discussed, that one should consider writing introduction after analysis of all literature. Then comes your main body. In your main body, one should avoid just merely describing what each article has found, but it should be just like a good presentation and discussion of all the findings from literature. It is, again, the most common approach to divide it into some themes or categories so that the flow is a little more logical. Addressing contradictions and inconsistencies and trying to explain them is something, again, which is important. Another approach of writing a review would be just to chronologically present the data of how a particular topic has emerged over time. And this is one of the reviews which does that beautifully. So I've just included that if somebody wanted to see how it is done. And then comes your conclusion. In your conclusion, you just give a concise summary of your findings and offer a rationale for future research of what should be done in this particular topic. It is important to highlight any gaps in literature which you have identified during your literature search, and giving recommendations or implications on current practice and research, or if something could be changed. Usually the conclusion should be in line with your introduction. Again, avoiding plagiarism is something which Dr. Sharmila also mentioned, Authenticate and Grammarly, and there are some websites which help you check your manuscript for plagiarism. So once your manuscript is drafted, arranging your bibliography is important. This was again covered by previous speakers. There are different citation managers like Zotero, Mendeley, and EndNote. I personally, like I mentioned, use Zotero because it is just easy to use for me. And then in the end, once your complete manuscript is ready, then comes writing your abstract, which could be either structured or unstructured. But sometimes a lot of people ask, how is abstract different from your introduction? One should not be copy pasting things from your introduction and putting it into the abstract. And an introduction is just going to give the reader some background about what your article is about, but it is not going to give any information about the conclusion and the results or any kind of methodology. So that is what your abstract is going to give. It can be structured or unstructured depending on the journal. So, and once the abstract is written, then you just submit the article and wait for it to hopefully get published. The take-home message would be that review articles are an important category of manuscripts, and the aim is to summarize the current knowledge on one particular topic. It is useful to both the authors as well as the readers. For the authors, because it is highly cited, and for the readers, because it becomes a one-point source of knowledge, like a go-to thing for one particular topic if they wanted to know about. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rashmi, for that wonderful talk. And all of your publications are very interesting. I think you should give one review article for TJOSR as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Rashmi.
Very nice.
That's
very
the
nice.
homework.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I think Rashmi has gone through the two pillars of publications, institutes. One is Narayan Netralaya, another is Eli Prasad now. In my opinion, probably one of the highest number of papers from these two institutions, I would say. And
trained in Cambridge, that adds to her credibility.
Yeah, with the Duva, that's even better. Yes.
Duva and Cambridge as well.
Cambridge as well.
Yeah. Cambridge.
Very nice.
Thank you so much.
Very nice talk, Rashmi.
So in the interest of time, I think we'll move on to the last talk. So we have the best for the end. We have our immediate past editor, Dr. Nirmal Frederick, and what A.R. Rahman says, anything, any praise for me regarding TJOSR, I think the credit goes to Nirmal sir for guiding me throughout. He's the authority for NABH, and he's the vice president of Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association. He has more than 40 publications, 12 book chapters, and 5 books as author. And he's the author of NABH Eye Care Standards and NABH Guidebook to Eye Care, and the AOS book on accreditation of eye centers. Over to you, Nirmal sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sharmila. At the outset, I would like to thank our president, Dr. Mohan Rajan, Dr. Santosh, editor of IJO, and all the eminent faculties here for having me here amidst the doyen of publishing in India. So, just to make my presentation a bit short, after hearing so much about publication and the research articles, and I think almost all the important aspect has been covered already. So this is one aspect. After publishing, we should feel good. So ethics means feeling good. So whether what you feel good about afterwards, and what is immoral is what you feel bad after. Bad about afterwards. So if you feel bad after publishing, then it is not ethics. So this is the simple way of seeing whether it is ethics, whether you have followed the publication ethics or not. And the most important in is not the result; it is in the process. So you should avoid all this kind of immoral activities on the way to publishing. I'll just highlight some of them so that it will be a warning as well as a pointer while you're preparing your research article. So you have to look inwards when you are writing, and after completing your writing, you have to again look inwards and see what all mistakes you have done, and also look at certain important factors before sending. So you all know academic research has many coordinated steps and processes. So that's what we heard the last 2 hours. Right from appropriate study design, execution, data collection, data analysis, and finally publication. An ethical code of conduct is that binds a researcher at every stage. So each and every step is bound by this ethical code of conduct. And there are certain institutions which has given a lot of guidelines regarding that. The Committee on Publication Ethics, acronym is SCOPE, the International Forum for Editors and Publishers of Reviewed Journals, the Code of Conduct for the authors, and the best practice guidelines. So all these define publication ethics, and it also gives editors some advice on how to handle cases of research or publication misconduct. So the overview of my talk, I'll be covering something on the conduct of the study, which is called as research ethics, the statutory and ethics approval. I think most of them are already covered by Deepak and few other speakers. The informed consent and something related to the data manipulation and research fraud. And in the publication aspects, plagiarism, simultaneous submission, duplicate publication, self-citation, and the ethics of authorship, and also what is the repercussion in case you will go overboard and do this. So these are the components of publication ethics. I'll just briefly cover these 6 parts. So ethics approval, it is mandatory as per the ICMR guidelines for ethics. And if you are going to do a drug trial, you have to get approval from the DCGI, Drugs Controller General of India. And there are certain guidelines for the formation of ethics committee. And if you don't have ethics committee in your institution, you can form one, or you can reach out to the nearest ethics committee of the medical college. And if you are going to do a clinical trial, you have to register with the Clinical Trials Registry of India. These are all mandatory things. The second point is informed consent and data confidentiality. Obtaining informed consent from all study participants is very important, and this should not be delegated to the other staff, and it should not be trivialized. And there are approved templates for the consent form. I think this is available in the DCGI and ICMR websites. And you have to be aware of the guidelines provided by the International Conference on Harmonization of Good Clinical Practice, and of course the tenets of Declaration of Helsinki. And recording is a good thing now. It's become a norm for industry-sponsored randomized clinical trials. And you have to store these consent forms for at least for 5 years. And you should also commit on protection of patient identity and confidentiality of the data. And third point is data manipulation and research fraud. And there's a huge gray area between what is good and what is bad, the green pointers towards the red pointers. So this gray area, there are things like fabrication and manipulation of the data, also known as falsification. So it's not only with data, but also with image, particularly with case reports and few other, the original articles. There are a lot of image manipulation that happens, right from cropping, brightness, contrast adjustment. So what are the implications of this data manipulation? It affects the research integrity, and it is considered as a misconduct. It impacts the reproducibility of the outcome and may result in paper retraction, the damage reputation to your career as well as image. So editors may request for the raw data or data sheets if sufficient data doubt is raised. The fourth point is plagiarism, most common form of scientific misconduct in manuscript writing. I think this started with the Google, which helped people think they are doctors since 1998. So the use of previously published work by another author was made easy with Google, and without consent or with consent, with credit or without credit or good acknowledgement. So there are 2 aspects to it. One is clear plagiarism, where there is unattributed use of large portion of the text or data presented as if they were by the plagiarist, and certain things that subtly happens like minor copying of the short phrases. So clear plagiarism is basically literally copying that happens in some of the dissertations. Paraphrasing happens in many of the scientific publications. The editors and the editorial team has to be really careful about this. So direct plagiarism and self-plagiarism. There are certain things like redundant publications or salami publications. So publishing similar manuscript based on the same experiment in many other journals. So how to avoid plagiarism, avoid copy-paste, write the concept in your own words. So this is basically what all the speakers told, spend more time while writing and acknowledge the original sources, even the unpublished works. So many similar work may be going on in your institution or other institutions. So you have to cite the original sources, cite the references accurately with the use of, now there are a lot of resource materials to get the good citations. Avoid writing several articles of the same type in the same manner, and use the anti-plagiarism software tools like, so we use IE Authenticate. It's a professional plagiarism prevention software. And the fifth point is ethics related to submission. So it's submitting the same manuscript simultaneously to different journals. This happens. So you would have presented in one conference, and it would have gone to the state conference. They would have submitted there, or it would have gone to IJO also. So this kind of simultaneous submission can be avoided, and duplicate publication. So submitting a new manuscript with the same data point, discussion, and conclusion. And self-citation and predatory journals, Dr. Santosh have already covered about this. And simultaneous submission, this is what I said, the onus is on the author to submit to one journal and wait for the decision from the editorial team before submitting to another journal. Duplicate publication, again, there are major and minor offenses related to this. I will not go into the details. And the third important aspect is self-citation. So this is actually very low with medical sciences, whereas it's very high in engineering sciences and natural sciences. So self-citation is perceived as unethical and looked down upon by peers. And this, for some authors, it is important because the number of times a paper is cited matters more than actually publishing it, because it is usually used in the calculating of metrics like G and H index, which is considered for academic promotions. The sixth point is authorship. So this confirms the credit, and this is where most of the editors will face problem. The author has to be clear about the responsibility as well as know their contribution to the scientific work. And the ICMJ, the International Committee of Medical Journal and Editors, recommend that authorship should be based on 4 criteria. This is available in their website also. Substantial contribution to the conception or design of the work, the acquisition, analysis, or interpretation of the data, which means they have really contributed to the entire study, not only during the progress, but also while drafting the work or revising the article, as well as final approval of the version to be published. And there has to be agreement between the authors to be accountable for all aspects of the work of the study. And the seventh point is conflict of interest. There should not be any conflict of interest, both financial, personal, social, or other interests that directly or indirectly influence the conduct of the author with respect to the manuscript. So this happens particularly in drug trials. So if there are any conflict, it has to be disclosed during the submission. This is of course mandatory for almost all the publications now. So what is the consequence of research misconduct? The again COPE Committee on Publication Ethics describe the consequences. So it all depends on the type of misconduct, whether it's a major misconduct or minor misconduct. So author can get blacklisted by members journal, whether temporarily or permanently, or the institutions can take action depending on the major or minor consequences. This is a wonderful checklist about publication ethics by again Santosh and Dr. Sengupta. So approval and consent phase, see whether you have approval from the regulatory authorities, whether there is clinical trial registry, and whether you have a documented informed consent. The next stage, data accuracy and falsification. Is there any manipulation of the data, and whether you have double checked data for accuracy, or is there any lurking fake data? And the third note is about plagiarism or self-plagiarism. See whether you used your own prior work. We generally tend to copy our own work. So if so, have you cited these correctly? And the fourth aspect is submission fraud. Avoid simultaneous submission, and see whether there is excessive self-citation. And authorship as per the COPE norms and ICFMG norms, and see whether there is any conflict of interest. So in the end, research and publication should give good feeling, and science brings society to the next level. Ethics keeps us there. Let us follow all these norms and keep science and us, our name and brand image at the highest level. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Wonderful, Nirmal.
Very nice.
Fantastic.
Very nice.
That was a perfect finish
Thank you, sir.
by the Dhoni of ophthalmology.
Yes.
General Frederick, number of sixes he hit in the final over, to finish it off so well. And beautiful picture and 6 points you highlighted about the ethics and the plagiarism, which is, I think, becoming more and more prevalent now. So how do you just control this? Santosh, what do you do for this as an editor of IJO?
We do a check, online check. We have a built-in software. Even reviewers can use it.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have to check it, and then there is a kind of a certain amount of level that is fixed for each article. No article can be without plagiarism. Plagiarism doesn't mean that they've copied something, but even a string of 5 words is picked up as plagiarism. References are picked up. Definitions and diagnostic criteria can never be changed. Definitions can never be changed. Those are also picked up. In review articles, the plagiarism index is going to be higher because it's a review of many articles, whereas for original articles, about 10% is considered okay. Anything beyond 10% is caught.
I think it is very important, very nice talk, Dr. Frederick. And I would just, one review article recently we had written in IE that was retracted articles in ophthalmology. So from 2010 onwards, we did a very extensive search, and there were 84 articles which were retracted, which were published, and then the articles were retracted, and all the reasons which sir had mentioned, many of them were there. And what was surprising, the mean retraction time was about 1.5 years later they were retracted, and the mean citations of these articles were 2. That means by the time they were retracted, already people had started citing. Yeah, so I think this is something which is very important, and people, it's not necessary that immediately they even recognize it later and the articles are retracted. Many journals, it's not only high rated like Lancet or NEJM, they have the articles have been retracted. I think that's something which it's not the publication gets over the moment it got into print. Many times it gets retracted even later. I think that's something you must all realize.
What is the action which has been taken on those authors, Rajiv?
They are blacklisted. They are blacklisted, and there is a list available. And but more than that, nothing actually much happens to them. But it's a black mark that these are the articles.
Generally, it is referred to the ethics committee of the journal or the association or the institution which is publishing the journal. So there is a misconduct level, minor or major level. Accordingly, the committee will decide. But generally, journals don't allow, after major offense, they don't allow the author to submit the article again. So that is one major offense. Or they, for a fixed time, say 2 years or 3 years, they don't allow to publish.
The blacklist is shared across all the journals.
So it is, they cannot submit to any other journal also?
Yeah, blacklist is shared.
Yeah, blacklisting.
So you are actually debarring them from them for 2 years.
Prolonged.
Submit to
Sometimes for life.
Okay. Sharmila?
I have one query, sir. Now, WhatsApp images are being circulated everywhere, and there was an issue when one of the WhatsApp images of another surgeon was used. So, what do we do about that without acknowledgement? They just said it was available and we used it. So,
we can't do anything. WhatsApp is a social media. Social media has no control, right? No legalities. Surgeon concerned has to take up with the individual who has circulated it. That's all. That's all we can do. I mean, there is no organizational structure to punish somebody who has recirculated images on WhatsApp. We won't even know the source.
So it's okay if you just publish
No,
an apology.
no, if you have a doubt, if the editorial team has a doubt, you can ask for the original picture without any editing. So most of them, if it's an original picture, they will send the raw picture. So if it is not available, we have to take a consent and then start. If it is mandatory to publish, you can publish.
I think nowadays
And
many
also
of the
we should, Sharmila, I think we should all, Santosh, I'm not sure what we should do, but we should all tell the people the WhatsApp images, not to put the images of the patients. So without the because there is an open this thing now. So anybody can take these WhatsApp images, and it's very difficult to find out who is doing what. So I think you should not put the images of the photographs of the patient face in the WhatsApp group at all. That is my personal opinion. I don't know what other people think about it.
Yes, true.
Yes.
Any closing remarks from JB, sir?
JB?
I think this is a wonderful talk and wonderful session on the journal, writing an article, publish and flourish. I think is that young people should take up this habit of writing. It's not only is that one, it makes it's a pleasure. You should enjoy writing. That's one of the things I would like to say at the end. Of all the things at the end, you should enjoy writing.
Thank you, sir. And you've been very kind enough to give a lot of review articles for TJS, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
No, there's a lot to learn from Dr. JB.
So, shall we wrap it up, sir?
Yeah.
So thanks to IJO editor Santosh sir for this wonderful collaboration. It was very interesting to have a mix of young researchers and senior professors and the top 2% of world class researchers. And it was very nice to have a different mix apart from the usual ones. And the goal of the webinar is to unleash the academic potential, to give you all an overview and to unleash the academic potential. And I hope this achieves it. And we hope to see more publications from all of you. Thank you very much. Thanks to the speakers and the chairpersons for the interesting talks and the discussion. I'm sure the PGs would have found, PGs and the other young researchers would have found it very interesting. Over to you, Santosh sir, for wrapping up the session.
I just want to thank Mohan for agreeing to host it as soon as I asked him if TNOA was interested. His reply was instantaneous within a few seconds. And thank all the chairpersons for their wonderful,
Till 28th May, whatever you ask me to do, I will do. You want me to fall at your feet, I will do that. 28th May is the deadline for all of us. You know that. Thanks.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you all. Good night.
We'll wrap it up.
Good night. Thanks a lot, Santosh.
Thanks
Thank
to
you, Sharmila.
Numerotech Sai and Manjula ma'am for
Rajiv, JB, Deepak, Rashmi,
Thank you. Good
Sashwanti.
night, sir.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.
I have not met Sashwanti for more than 2 weeks now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, Sharmila.
Sir, good night, sir.
Santosh.
Hi, Mohan.
Maybe one more. Thank you very much.
Thank you.